Chapter 4:15. Lin Shihao narrowed his eyes and said slowly, I agree to let you work at his company, but you have to promise me that if you find out that he has feelings for you other than as a normal friend or superior, you have to resign. I promise you. Yi Siki hugged his neck excitedly and kissed him on the cheek. I'm so happy. Thank you. I really don't know what to do with you. Lin Shihao ruffled her hair helplessly. Hubby, you're the best. Yi Siki could tell that a certain someone was still feeling a little uncomfortable. She used her long-lost peerless coquettish technique and hugged him, rubbing and kissing him. She didn't even realize that the evil fire in his heart was coming out. Lin Shihao's body part was slowly changing. He purposely rubbed her waist with that part and chuckled softly. Wifey, you're the one who started this. You have to be responsible for appeasing the fire. Yi Siki blushed. She rarely took the initiative in this aspect, but seeing that he was willing to let go of his grudge and agree to let her work at Xiao Tianqing's company, she had to reward him. She hooked her arms around his neck and raised her head to kiss his lips. He enjoyed her initiative and let her take the initiative. He opened his mouth cooperatively and kissed her passionately. With nimble movements of his fingers, their bathrobes were unknowingly pulled apart. Their skin touched, bringing a wave of numbness, and at the same time, it caused their souls to throb. Lin Shihao's fingertips slowly slid down. His breathing became heavy and difficult to control. He followed her beautiful neck to her collarbone and left a faint bite mark. He whispered in a hoarse voice, You're mine. He wanted to leave his mark on her body and make the man who coveted her go away. Yi Siki's body was on fire from his teasing. Her body's reaction was completely instinctive. She wanted to be filled with something. Lin Shihao's kiss went lower and lower, until his mark landed on her abdomen. Her entire body tensed up and she was about to cry out. She helplessly called out to him, Hubby? It's so hot. Under the dim light, her eyes were misty and her cheeks were red. She bit her red and swollen lips and moaned softly. She was so beautiful that he almost couldn't take his eyes off her. He held her slender waist with both hands and looked at her delicate face with his dark eyes. He laughed deeply and said in a hoarse voice, Wifey, don't worry. I'll satisfy you soon. His flirtatious words made her blush even more. Biting her lips tightly, he followed her silent invitation and slowly lowered his waist into her. After that, she begged for mercy countless times. Even when she was completely exhausted, he still set off fierce waves of heat on her body. After a long time, he carried her into the bathroom and cleaned her up. He held her in his arms and watched her fall into a deep sleep. She murmured in her sleep, Hubby, don't do it anymore. I'm so tired. He kissed her forehead gently. Wifey, I love you. When Yi Siki woke up the next day, it was already past 8 o'clock. She sat up in bed in shock and touched the blanket beside her. It was already cold. There was a post-it note on the bedside table. Wifey, breakfast is in the kitchen. If it's cold, heat it up in the microwave. I'll send Ñoño to school today. Rest well at home. Love, your husband. She held the note tightly and her heart was filled with warmth. She set the alarm every day because she was worried that she would oversleep. She didn't expect that she would oversleep. She didn't know that Lin Shihao had deliberately turned off the alarm so that she could have a good sleep. Breakfast was her favorite omelette and Ñoño's favorite sandwich. After heating it in the microwave for a while, the kitchen immediately emitted a strong aroma. Although the room was empty, it was filled with his love for her. She thought that it would be great if they could continue like this. But reality was always cruel. She didn't even dare to look at it directly. 2 days later, Yi Siki officially reported to Century Brocade. She put on a suit that she hadn't worn in a long time and stood awkwardly in front of Lin Shihao. Hubby, do I look a little strange? Lin Shihao smiled and comforted her. How is it strange? I think it's very good. Wifey, don't be nervous. Do the job you like. You can definitely do it. Ñoño also encouraged her. Mommy, you can do it. You're the best. She smiled brightly. Okay, Mommy will definitely not let you and Daddy down. The father and daughter cheered her on together, and her uneasy mood calmed down a lot. The family of 3 went out together. Because it was on the way, Yi Siki sent Ñoño to school. Before the little fellow got out of the car, she hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. She said sweetly, Mommy, you're the best. You'll definitely succeed. My Ñoño is so considerate. Mommy is so touched. Yi Siki smiled and hugged her. Ñoño, be a good guy at school. Mommy will pick you up tonight. Okay, bye, Mommy. The little fellow jumped out of the car and waved at her with a smile. Bye. Yi Siki watched her daughter run into the school gate before driving away. Xiao Tianxing had already informed the HR department, so when Yisiki took his business card and reported to the manager of the HR department, she didn't encounter any obstacles. The manager was very polite to her and personally helped her with the entry procedures. Then he took her upstairs to see Xiao Tianxing. Xiao Tianxing's office was on the top floor of Century Brocade. Yisiki followed the manager of the HR department to take the staff elevator to the top floor. After the secretary informed them on the internal line, she invited them in. Instead of calling it an office, it was more like a presidential suite. It was even more luxurious than a presidential suite. The huge room was at least 200 square meters. Not only did it have an office area, a leisure area, and a sports area. The owner of the office, Xiao Tianxing, was wearing a bathrobe and walking out of the bathroom. He was wiping his wet hair with a towel in his hand. Chen Yu, the manager of the HR department, seemed to be used to his disheveled appearance. Her face didn't turn red and her heart didn't beat fast. Her tone was very calm. President, Miss Ye's entry procedures have been completed. Even though he was wearing a bathrobe, his words and actions were incomparably elegant. He faintly said, Manager Chen, if there's nothing else, you can go back to work. Okay. Chen Yu nodded politely. After leaving the office, she closed the door behind her. Only the two of them were left in the office. Yisiki felt an invisible pressure. She looked down and stood straight, reminding herself to ignore the fact that he was wearing a bathrobe. Why are you still standing? Xiao Tianxing smiled and glanced at Yisiki. Take a seat first. I'll go change. Yisiki secretly sighed in relief and took the opportunity to sit on a fabric sofa. A few minutes later, Xiao Tianxing walked out elegantly in white trousers and a light-colored v-neck woolen sweater. His simple style perfectly outlined his handsomeness and straightforwardness. He walked to the leisure area and poured 2 cups of fragrant handmade coffee. He handed 1 cup to Yisiki and kept the other for himself. He leaned comfortably on the sofa and crossed his legs. There was a playful smile on his handsome face. Your husband actually let you come to work for me? Yisiki held the warm coffee cup with both hands. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. Don't underestimate my husband. He's very open-minded. Xiao Tianxing sneered. I could tell when we were at the hospital that he was very possessive. I'm afraid he only agreed to let you work at my company because of the guilt in his heart. Yisiki pursed her lips and smiled. Actually, she knew that Lin Shihao felt guilty about her giving up her job to take care of her husband and children. However, she didn't want him to feel that way. She didn't want to create a sense of imbalance between them because of this. Xiao Tianxing took a sip of coffee, put the coffee cup on the coffee table, and tapped the back of the sofa with his fingers. Later, the personnel department will introduce you to your position. Uncle Yu will be your direct superior. He's the top senior nutritionist in the country. His personality is a bit strange and he's very strict with his subordinates. You have to be mentally prepared. If he doesn't approve of you, even I can't persuade him. If you want to back out, it's not too late. The corners of his lips curled up and his eyes flashed with a sly light. I still lack an assistant. Yisiki's heart trembled slightly. She understood that the top people in the industry usually had a strange temper. However, this didn't make her want to back out. Instead, it aroused her strong initiative. She smiled slightly. There's no need for an assistant. I think I'm more suitable for the position of an assistant nutritionist. Good. Xiao Tianxing clapped his hands, his eyes full of praise. Yisiki, welcome to Century Brocade. Thank you. Yisiki said thank you very sincerely. She was very grateful for everything he had done. Uncle Yu's full name was Yu Jinlin. He was already 58 years old this year. Among the employees he was the oldest, so everyone respectfully called him Uncle Yu. His hair was half white, his face was square, he didn't smile and he was very strict. When they first came into contact with him, they felt that he was very difficult to get along with. After a long time they realized that he was actually very kind. In his eyes there was no concept of superiors and subordinates. There was only right and wrong. Therefore, even if Xiao Tianxing made an unreasonable decision, he would still raise his doubts. He was such an old man who made people respect him. Powerful novel Hongcha 866. Chapter 416. When Chen Yu brought Yisiki to the kitchen to report in, Uncle Yu was instructing the kitchen handyman Xiao Wang on how to prepare the fish. After hearing Chen Yu's introduction, he looked up at Yisiki. Yisiki bowed unhurriedly. Uncle Yu, I am the new assistant nutritionist Yisiki. Please take good care of me. Uncle Yu sized her up. He reached out and pressed down on Xiao Wang's kitchen knife. He said calmly, You handle this carp. This sentence was directed at Yisiki. Yisiki smiled graciously. Okay. She had done plenty of fish handling. Although it looked simple, there was a lot of skill involved. Uncle, you must be using this opportunity to test her. Yisiki rolled up her sleeves, put on gloves, and took the kitchen knife from Xiao Wang. The fish had been knocked unconscious by Xiao Wang and was lying motionless on the chopping board. She skillfully removed the scales and gills. Then she used the knife to make a horizontal cut about an inch from the back of the gills to the back of the fish's gills. She then used the knife to make a horizontal cut about an inch from the back of the fish's gills to the back of the fish's gills. She used her fingers to pull out the fish's tendons. Then she used the same method to pull out the tendons on the other side. After she pulled out the tendons, she cut open the fish's stomach and dug out the internal organs. Then she cleaned the fish's stomach and body. After she was done neatly, she placed the cleaned carp back on the chopping board and smiled. Uncle Yu, I'm done. Uncle Yu stared at her for a few seconds with his deep eyes. He then glanced at the clean carp and said calmly, Why did you pull out the tendons? Yisiki smiled. After you handle it like this, the fish won't smell fishy after it's cooked. Uncle Yu looked at her expressionlessly. Then he turned to look at Xiao Wang, who was standing beside him. Got it? Xiao Wang nodded repeatedly. Got it? Come with me. Uncle Yu glanced at Yisiki. He did not wait for her to reply and walked straight ahead. Yisiki nodded politely at Qinyu and quickly followed Uncle Yu. A faint smile appeared on Qinyu's lips as she watched them leave one after another. Xiao Wang came up to her curiously and asked, Sister Qin, does that newcomer Yisiki have some sort of background? Otherwise, why would Uncle Yu take her in? Qinyu raised her hand and knocked him on the head. Just mind your own business. Don't ask anything you shouldn't ask. Little Wang scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. I understand. After Qinyu returned to the office, the first thing she did was to call the internal line to report on Yisiki's situation. President, Uncle Yu has begun to assess Miss Yi. From what I can see, he is quite satisfied with Miss Yi's performance. Xiao Tianxing chuckled. He was right about Yisiki. She was indeed a capable person. Although he wanted to help her, he did not care if she was not capable enough to do the job. Century Brocade's kitchen was very large and was divided into different operating areas. There was a cutting room, a pooling area, a cooking area, a steaming area, a catering area, a dish delivery area, and so on. Here the division of labor was clear. Everyone stuck to their job and did their best to do their job. After Uncle Yu showed Yisiki around the kitchen, he brought her to the cooking area. It was not dinner time yet, so everyone was preparing. The cooking area was relatively quiet. He looked at her and said, Tell me, what does a nutritionist do? Yisiki thought for a moment and said, A qualified nutritionist is a combination of a nutritionist, a doctor, and a chef. Their main job is to study the relationship between the nutrients in food and the needs of the human body. In other words, they guide people on what to eat, how to eat, and how much to eat. After hearing her answer, Uncle Yu did not show any special expression. He said slowly, I want you to make 2 dishes within an hour. One will nourish the lungs and the other will help you lose weight and detoxify. Okay, no problem, Yisiki agreed readily. She was not in a hurry to start. Instead, she thought for a moment. After deciding what to make, she prepared the ingredients in the vegetable and meat processing rooms. It only took her half an hour to make the 2 dishes. She brought them to the dining area for Uncle Yu to taste. Uncle Yu opened the first small bowl. It was bamboo shoot and white fungus soup. It had the effect of losing weight and detoxifying, and it looked pretty good. He tasted it with a spoon and did not say anything. He looked at the second pot. Yisiki quickly opened the pot, ladled out half a bowl and presented it to him with both hands. As he tasted it, Yisiki smiled and introduced, The second dish is pumpkin stewed with beef. Not only can it prevent colds, but it also has the effect of moisturizing the lungs, relieving coughing and asthma, and moisturizing and nourishing the skin. Uncle Yu put down the bowl and looked up at the woman standing obediently beside him. He smiled for the first time that day. You controlled the heat well, used the right amount of seasoning, and handled the ingredients well. You passed. Yisiki's heart, which had been in her throat, finally calmed down. She clenched her fist and swung it down. She exclaimed excitedly, That's great, Uncle Yu. Thank you. Uncle Yu had already restrained his smile and said with a straight face, Don't be happy too early. You still have a lot of room for improvement. Yisiki nodded profusely. I know. I will continue to work hard. Uncle Yu nodded calmly and stood up from his chair. Your task today is to supervise the workers in washing and cutting vegetables. How long should the vegetables be soaked so that the nitrite content does not increase? How should the meat be cut to make it easier to cook? You should know all these things, right? Yes. Yi Siki was full of confidence. Uncle Yu lifted his chin. Okay, get to work. Yi Siki quickly familiarized herself with the work environment. Her theoretical knowledge and practical experience enabled her to handle the task with ease. Coupled with Uncle Yu's guidance, her passion for nutrition grew. She felt as if she had returned to her university days, full of passion, full of energy, and wholeheartedly wanting to make a career out of herself. This kind of passion and satisfaction even made her temporarily forget about the crisis in her family. However, forgetting did not mean that it did not exist. On Saturday, Lin Shihao said that he had to attend a seminar and would not be home for lunch. He would only be home in the evening. Before he left, he hugged her and kissed her cheek. She did not know if it was her imagination or if she was just suspicious, but she felt that there was something wrong with his expression. Yi Siki hesitated for a long time, but in the end she still dialed the card number in the tracker. Soon, the tracker transmitted his location to her phone. The Starlight Revolving Restaurant, located on the highest floor of City A, was magnificently decorated and extraordinary. Through the spacious and bright floor-to-ceiling glass windows, there was a panoramic view of the tall buildings, the beautiful beach and the Zhongxing Avenue. There were more than 100 kinds of exquisite Chinese and Western dishes on the dining car surrounded by flowers. In the middle of the restaurant, a jazz band was playing a graceful and affectionate nostalgic song. Yi Siki and Xiao Tianxing walked into the restaurant and immediately saw Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei sitting by the glass window. At this moment, Bai Meiwei was wearing a red wool dress. Her hair was tied up on top of her head, revealing her fair neck. Her pearl earrings made her face look even more radiant. She had a shy and happy smile on her face, and her red lips were moving slightly as if she was saying something. Lin Shihao's back was facing the entrance, so she could not see his expression clearly. However, just looking at Bai Meiwei's expression at this moment, Yi Siki's heart was filled with jealousy. She wanted to immediately rush up and make a scene, but her rationality suppressed this thought in the end. Xiao Tianxing calmly held her hand and said in a low voice, "Don't be rash." She bit her lip and tried to pull her hand out of his grasp, but he held it even tighter. "Don't move. Be careful not to be discovered by them." He pulled her to a table far away from Lin Shihao and sat down. She said unhappily, "Why are we sitting here? I can barely see what they're doing." Xiao Tianxing calmly glared at her. "Are you stupid? If we're sitting so close to them, it'll be easy for them to realize that we're following them on purpose." Yi Siki said dejectedly, "You're smart. Tell me, what should we do now?" Xiao Tianxing's gaze swept around and finally landed on the band in the middle of the restaurant. The corners of his lips curled up, and he raised his eyebrows proudly. "I have an idea." Yi Siki was about to ask him what the idea was when she suddenly heard her phone ring. It was a text message. She opened it and saw that it was another photo sent by Bai Meiwei. In the photo, Lin Shihao was sitting alone at the table, his head tilted to the side as he admired the scenery outside the glass window. Xiao Tianxing leaned over to take a look. He rubbed his chin and analyzed. This could be a photo that Bai Meiwei secretly took when she used the excuse of going to the restroom. "Look, the angle of the photo is that way. That's the direction that leads to the restroom." Yi Siki snorted angrily. Xiao Tianxing grinned. "Don't be angry. Her motive for sending this photo was to make you angry. If you get angry, won't you be letting her off easy?" "That's true. I won't be angry. I won't be angry." Yi Siki tried to convince herself again and again. Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei had already finished eating. He lifted his wrist and looked at his watch. There was a subtle hint of impatience between his brows as he said calmly, "Don't you still want to go shopping? Let's go." Bai Meiwei grabbed his arm and dragged him to sit down again. "Senior, we have one day. Don't be anxious. The scenery here is so beautiful. Let's sit here for a while longer." Lin Shihao frowned. "I have to go home before 5 o'clock. He still wanted to go home and have dinner with his wife and child. Bai Meiwei pouted. "This is our second date. Can't you accompany me for a while longer?" Lin Shihao pursed his thin lips and his eyes darkened. Just as he was about to say something, the lead singer of the band said through the microphone, "Dear distinguished guests, we are very sorry to interrupt your meal. A guest would like to dedicate a song to his friend. Mr. Xiao, please come on stage." Welfare Song Shu 566. Chapter 417. Xiao Tianxing. This name suddenly entered Lin Shihao's ears. He suddenly turned his head and looked towards the center of the restaurant, only to see a man in a suit elegantly walking towards the band. With a warm smile on his handsome face, Xiao Tianqing took the microphone from the lead singer. His eyes gazed affectionately in a certain direction and he slowly said, "This song I want to give to my friend, this one. I promise you, this is my promise to you, I will give you strength, I will give you hope, Siki." Lin Shihao's eyes suddenly tightened. He couldn't believe his eyes as he followed Xiao Tianqing's gaze to the corner of the dining room. He saw his wife. She was wearing a bohemian-style knitted dress. Her beautiful short hair was tucked behind her ears. Her eyes were smiling as she looked at Xiao Tianqing. This "I Promise You" was a classic foreign love song. Xiao Tianqing sat on a high chair with a guitar in his arms. The beautiful melody flowed slowly from his slender fingertips. His magnetic and gentle voice affectionately expressed his deep love. He gazed at Yi Siki from afar as if she was the only one in the world. Lin Shihao clenched his fists tightly. His sharp gaze locked onto Xiao Tianqing and Yi Siki. The jealousy in his heart burned like a volcano that was about to erupt. Bai Meiwei also saw Yi Siki. Her eyes flashed with jealousy and hatred. She chuckled and said, "Senior, is that sister-in-law? I know that man. He's the owner of Charm Bar. When did they become so close? They're also dating, right?" Lin Shihao's expression turned even uglier. His nails dug into his palms. His eyes were fierce. He wanted nothing more than to pounce on Xiao Tianqing and tear him apart. Bai Meiwei's smile widened as she sensed the hostility emanating from his body. Her voice also became softer as she said, "I thought sister-in-law loved you very much. Now it seems that she and Xiao Tianqing are already in love with each other." Her words were like a match that ignited the bomb in Lin Shihao's heart. With a bang, the bomb exploded and blew up all of his rationality. The song ended. The lingering sound lingered in the air. Everyone was immersed in the affectionate and beautiful song, unable to extricate themselves for a long time. Yi Siki couldn't help but stand up and applaud Xiao Tianqing. The lonely applause quickly led the others to applaud. For a moment, the applause was like thunder. The lead singer of the band joked, "Mr. Xiao, your singing is excellent. It's China's music industry's loss that you're not a singer." Xiao Tianqing smiled. "Sorry. Actually, I rarely sing. I hope that my friend will like it." The lead singer looked at Yi Siki and said loudly, "Miss Siki, do you like Mr. Xiao's gift?" His action attracted everyone's attention to Yi Siki. Some people smiled kindly, while others looked at her curiously. She blushed slightly and brushed her hair behind her ear embarrassedly. She pursed her lips and smiled. "I like it." As soon as the word, "I like it," came out of her mouth, a tall figure rushed to her side like lightning. He grabbed her wrist and dragged her out recklessly. "Hobby." Yi Siki's eyes widened. She looked up at the man who was dragging her. Lin Shihao's handsome face was covered with dark clouds. His dark eyes were surging with anger, ready to burst out at any time. He was very strong. His grip on her wrist hurt. She couldn't help but cry out, "It hurts." "Hubby, what are you doing? Come with me." His thin lips were pursed tightly. His sharp gaze was like a sharp knife stabbing at her. His voice was bone-chilling, but his grip on her wrist loosened subconsciously. Slow down." Yi Siki staggered a few steps and almost fell down from his dragging. Xiao Tianqing stuffed the guitar into the lead singer's arms and rushed over. He scolded coldly, "Lin Shihao, let go of her. This is between us husband and wife. You don't have to interfere." Lin Shihao said, then dragged Yi Siki away. Xiao Tianqing didn't chase after them this time. Instead, he crossed his arms and a sly smile appeared in his eyes. The customers in the restaurant were shocked by this scene. They used their rich imaginations to speculate about the ins and outs of the situation. Some people even whispered to each other and exchanged gossipy opinions. Bai Meiwei looked at the empty seat opposite her and trembled with anger. She didn't expect Lin Shihao to rush over without a care for anything and throw away his dignity in front of so many people. She took a sip of her drink and tried to suppress the anger in her heart. She picked up her purse and was about to follow them. The waiter walked over and said politely, "Madam, you haven't paid the bill yet." Bai Meiwei's face darkened. She quickly took out her wallet and pulled out a card. By the time she paid the bill, Lin Shihao and Yi Siki had already disappeared. She grabbed her purse and quickly walked out of the restaurant. She didn't expect to bump into Xiao Tianqing in the corridor. Xiao Tianqing stood in front of her with his hands in his trouser pockets. His gaze fell on her lightly. She nodded politely and took a step to the left, intending to walk past him. He also took a step to the left and blocked her path. She took a step to the right and he followed suit. Bai Meiwei simply stopped in her tracks. She stared at his face with her beautiful eyes and said calmly, "Mr. Xiao, is there anything I can help you with?" Xiao Tianxing sneered. "Nothing." Her expression changed. She tried her best to remain calm. "If there's nothing, please move aside." His lips curled into a mocking smile. He said calmly, "That's strange. You go your way and I go mine. How am I in your way?" She frowned and tightened her grip on her purse. Her voice was slightly cold. "Very well. Since we each have our own objectives, then we have nothing to do with each other." She took another step forward. This time he stood still and she easily brushed past him. However, when she took the elevator downstairs, Lin Shihao was nowhere to be seen. He had already dragged Yi Siki somewhere. Bai Meiwei was so angry that she stomped her feet and almost broke her silver teeth. A car sped along the road. Yi Siki gripped her seatbelt tightly and said uneasily, "Hubby, slow down." Lin Shihao's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He looked straight ahead and gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He said coldly, "Why are you and Xiao Tianxing here?" Yi Siki pouted pitifully. "Chairman Xiao said he would treat me to a meal to celebrate my joining the company." In order to appease his anger, she addressed Xiao Tianxing as Chairman Xiao. Sure enough, Lin Shihao's expression eased a little. "He sang for you. What's up with that?" Yi Siki laughed dryly. "Well, we actually made a bet. Whoever lost the bet had to go on stage and sing a song. He lost, so he had no choice but to accept his loss." Lin Shihao looked at her suspiciously. "A bet? What kind of bet?" "Actually, it's related to my field of expertise. He ordered a soup with many ingredients in it. He said that if I could guess all the ingredients in it just by drinking a mouthful of the soup, I would win. If I couldn't, he would win. In the end, I won." Yi Siki's tone was light, as if she didn't understand what he was angry about. "Is that really it?" Lin Shihao looked at her suspiciously, still in disbelief. "Of course it's that." Yi Siki sighed helplessly. "There's really nothing between us. Why didn't you tell me in advance that he would treat you to a meal? Also, if it's just an employee-boss relationship, why would he treat you to a meal at such a high-end restaurant?" Lin Shihao was like a seasoned detective who didn't give up on any clues. Yi Siki didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "He decided to treat me to a meal at the last minute. I didn't have time to tell you before you left." She suddenly thought of something and stared at him with burning eyes. Her tone became serious. "Hubby, weren't you at the conference? Why were you at the revolving restaurant?" Lin Shihao's heart sank. D***, he had rushed in front of her in a fit of anger and had forgotten about it. At that moment, the tables had turned. Lin Shihao was originally in an advantageous position, but now he was suddenly in a disadvantageous position. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, and a chill ran down his spine. His thin lips moved, and he was about to blurt out the truth when a melodious ringtone sounded. He swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He pressed the answer button, and a gentle female voice came from the other end of the line. "Shihao, come back tomorrow with Nyonyo. Mom hasn't seen you in a long time and I miss you." "Okay, got it." Lin Shihao chatted with his mother, Jiang Rulin, for a while before ending the call. There was silence in the car. The conversation just now was interrupted by a phone call, and the courage that Lin Shihao had worked so hard to muster was also worn away. He gritted his teeth and said slowly, "The conference is over. I went to the restaurant to eat with a colleague." Yi Siki's eyes hid a hint of sadness, and she felt a little upset. If she hadn't seen him sitting with Bai Meiwei with her own eyes, she would have really believed his words. However, she had also lied to him, so how could she blame him for lying to her? Xiao Tianxing was right. Her enemy wasn't Lin Shihao but Bai Meiwei. At least, her plan with Xiao Tianxing had succeeded. They had ruined Bai Meiwei's date, and that woman must be hopping mad. Imagining her flustered and exasperated look, Yi Siki's mood improved a little. She grinned silently and said, "Let's go home. Nyonyo is home alone." He slowly spat out a word. "Okay." Jiang Rulin was Lin Shihao's mother. She was a very powerful woman. Lin Shihao's father passed away when he was in high school. She took out all her savings and opened a small restaurant to support her son's education. More than 10 years later, the small restaurant had become a big restaurant, and she had become a famous local career woman. When Yi Siki and Lin Shihao got married, she was very happy and had always wanted to train Yi Siki to be the successor of the restaurant. Unfortunately, Yi Siki wanted to be a good wife and raise children, so she gave up on that idea and planned to pass the restaurant to her grandson. In the end, after Yi Siki gave birth to a daughter, she never got pregnant again. The grandson that she had been looking forward to for many years was nowhere in sight. Her attitude towards Yi Siki also turned cold. Come and see. Songshu 566. Chapter 418. Jiang Rulin lived on the other side of the city. Lin Shihao and Yi Siki would bring their children home to visit her every month. Every time they came home, Yi Siki would buy her many gifts, help her with the housework and make her happy. However, she never treated Yi Siki well. Jiang Rulin lived alone in a high-end residential area. She hired a nanny at home. Every time her son and daughter-in-law came home, she gave the nanny a day off. Firstly, there would be no outsiders present, and it would be easier for her family members to talk. Secondly, she wanted to deliberately make things difficult for Yi Siki. She left all the chores of buying groceries, cooking and washing the dishes to her. Outside the door, Lin Shihao held the gifts Yi Siki bought for his mother with both hands. Yi Siki was holding vegetables and fruits in her hands. Nyonyo obediently rang the doorbell. Shihao and Nyonyo, you're here. Come in quickly. Jiang Rulin wore a red turtleneck sweater and a plain shawl. She had light makeup on her face. Although she was already in her 50s, thanks to the years of maintenance, she looked younger. Her every movement exuded an air of nobility. She welcomed her son and granddaughter into the house with a smile, as if Yi Siki didn't exist. Lin Shihao knew that his mother had a problem with Siki, so whenever he had the chance he would praise Siki in front of her. He smiled and said, "Mom, Siki took a fancy to a dress a few days ago. She thinks it suits you, so she specially bought it for you. Do you want to try it on?" Jiang Rulin glanced at Yi Siki, who was holding vegetables and fruits, and said indifferently, "Why did she buy those messy things again? It's not like I don't have money. If I need anything I can buy it myself." Yi Siki maintained the smile on her face and said gently, "Mom, the design of that dress is elegant and generous. It can highlight your temperament. When I was shopping I took a fancy to it at first sight. I felt that only you could wear that kind of feeling." "Mom, Siki means well. Just try it on and let us admire it." Lin Shihao handed one of the bags to Jiang Rulin. "Grandma, just give it a try. I want to see it too." Nyonyo threw herself into her arms and hugged her coquettishly. Her beautiful big eyes blinked, full of anticipation. Although Jiang Rulin hoped that Yi Siki would give birth to a boy, it didn't mean that she didn't like Nyonyo. On the contrary, she liked smart and sensible Nyonyo. She couldn't bear to reject the child's innocent eyes. "Since you and your father and daughter say so, I'll give it a try." She carried the clothes into the bedroom. Lin Shihao turned his head and looked at Yi Siki apologetically. Yi Siki smiled at him silently and walked into the kitchen with the things in her hands. Yi Siki had only bought clothes for her twice. The first time was when Nyonyo was 3 years old. Jiang Rulin's attitude towards Yi Siki had already turned cold. She had accused Yi Siki of having no taste and that the clothes she bought were like goods from a street stall. The second time was this time. Jiang Rulin took out the dress from the bag. The price tag was still there. It was a 5-digit price tag. It was Chanel's new autumn/winter collection. Even she couldn't bear to buy too many of such expensive clothes. She only bought 2 or 3 pieces to keep up appearances. She felt conflicted. After changing, she stood in front of the full-length mirror. She looked at the woman in the mirror. She was elegant and generous. Just as Yi Siki said, it suited her. She wasn't the only one who thought it was good. Lin Shihao and Nyonyo also praised it in unison. Yi Siki smiled faintly. "Mom, it's very beautiful. It really suits you." Jiang Rulin snorted coldly. "You didn't even use Shihao's money to buy such expensive clothes. You didn't earn a single cent, yet you still spent so extravagantly. Even if you don't feel distressed, I do." Yi Siki clenched her fists. Her expression changed. She forced a smile. Lin Shihao's expression turned ugly. "Mom, Siki and I are husband and wife. What do you mean by mine and hers? We are one. We shouldn't be separated. Besides, Siki doesn't spend money recklessly. She is very thrifty with her clothes and necessities. She puts all her attention on me and Nyonyo. She has never been stingy with you. Please don't say such heart-wrenching words again." He had never said such harsh words. Even when his mother made things difficult for Siki in front of him, he had never reprimanded her. Instead, he persuaded his mother behind her back. But this time he couldn't stand it anymore. He didn't want his beloved wife to be made difficult by his mother, whom he respected. Jiang Rulin didn't expect her son to challenge her authority. She was so angry that her face turned pale. Her lips trembled as she said angrily, It's true that once you marry a wife, you forget your mother. How did I raise such an unfilial son? Mom, can't you be more reasonable? The veins on Lin Shihao's forehead were throbbing. He was so agitated that it seemed like he was going to explode with all the grievances that had accumulated over the years. Isiki quickly grabbed his arm and said in a low voice, "Hubby, calm down. Don't say any more." Lin Shihao pressed the back of her hand. "No, since I've already spoken, let me finish. Mom, think about it. Isn't Siki good to you? When she heard that you wanted to eat something, she went to several markets to buy ingredients to make it for you. Then she delivered it to your door. When you were hospitalized for appendicitis, she stayed at the hospital every day to take care of you. When your stomach wasn't well, she studied it at home for more than a month. She wrote a diet recipe for the nanny and asked the nanny to cook according to the recipe. She did so many things for you. Why can't you see the good in her?" Jiang Rulin's face alternated between red and white. She stared straight at Lin Shihao and said angrily, "In my eyes, no matter how good she is, nothing is more important than a grandson." She snorted angrily and left the livid Lin Shihao, the pale Yisiki and Nyonyo, who was about to cry, to return to her room. She locked herself in her room and didn't answer anyone who knocked on the door. Lin Shihao's family of 3 stood in the empty living room. They were all in a bad mood. Yisiki forced a smile. "Hubby, let Mom be alone for a while. I'm going to prepare lunch." Lin Shihao's expression eased a little. "Let me help you." "No need. You can accompany Nyonyo." Yisiki bent down and stroked Nyonyo's hair. She said gently, "Nyonyo, play with Daddy in the living room for a while. Mommy is going to the kitchen to cook." "Okay." Nyonyo nodded obediently. Yisiki walked into the kitchen and closed the door. The tears that she had been holding back slowly flowed out of her eyes. Lin Shihao sat on the sofa with his daughter in his arms and watched TV. His gaze lingered in the kitchen, and there was a hint of heartache in his deep eyes. Nyonyo nestled in his arms and said in a muffled voice, "Daddy, does Grandma not like me anymore?" Lin Shihao was slightly stunned. He lowered his head and looked at his daughter in his arms. She buried her little head in his chest and clutched his clothes tightly. She seemed very nervous and scared. His heart ached. He stroked her hair and said gently, "How can that be? Grandma likes Nyonyo the most." "But Grandma said that she wants a grandson." Nyonyo looked up at him and pouted. "Grandma likes boys. It would be great if I were a boy." Lin Shihao was speechless. In the past, his mother still cared about the child and would not say such things in front of the child. What she said today not only hurt him and Siki, but also hurt Nyonyo. His heart ached. He held his daughter in his arms and said gently, "Nyonyo, no matter if you are a boy or a girl, Grandma will love you all the same." Grandma was so angry with Daddy that she said those things. In the end, Daddy was wrong. Can you forgive Daddy? He took all the responsibility and diverted Nyonyo's attention. Sure enough, her negative emotions were reduced by a lot. She hugged his neck and kissed him on the cheek. Smiling sweetly, she said, "I forgive Daddy. Nyonyo is so obedient." Lin Shihao smiled and stroked her hair. Lunch was ready. Lin Shihao knocked on the door of the master bedroom. "Mom, it's time to eat. These are all your favorite dishes." For a while, no one answered. Lin Shihao knocked again and raised his voice slightly. "Mom, it's time to eat." Jiang Rulin's angry voice came. "I'm not eating. I'm full from anger. What's there to eat?" Lin Shihao stood at the door for a while. He clenched his fingers and turned back to the dining room. Isiki came out of the kitchen with a bowl of soup. Nyonyo sat on her little chair with an uneasy expression on her face. "Daddy, is Grandma still angry?" Lin Shihao smiled. "No, Grandma is tired and doesn't want to go out. Daddy will bring it in for Grandma. You and Mommy can eat first." Nyonyo said softly, "Oh." Lin Shihao opened the door of the master bedroom with the spare key. Jiang Rulin was lying on the bed with her back facing the door. He put the food on the bedside table and sat on the edge of the bed. He whispered, "Mom, Nyonyo just asked me if Grandma doesn't like me anymore. She also said that Grandma likes boys and that it would be great if I was a boy." Jiang Rulin's body stiffened. Actually, she regretted saying those words in front of Nyonyo. However, she wanted to save face. Even if it was her fault, she didn't want to admit it. "Mom, you didn't see how uneasy she was? To be honest, I felt very uncomfortable looking at her. Nyonyo is a big child. She can understand those words." Lin Shihao's voice was a little hoarse. Jiang Rulin didn't say a word. She stiffly maintained her lying on her side. Lin Shihao said slowly, "Mom, I know it's hard for you to manage the restaurant alone. It's our fault for not being able to help. Actually, there's a way to solve this problem. You just need to hire a professional manager to help you manage the restaurant. Then you can relax. Jiang Rulin turned around and stared at him with shining eyes. You think I haven't considered this problem? But the restaurant is our family's business. It needs to be inherited by our family. Lin Shihao pursed his thin lips and said in a low voice, Mom, Nyonyo can also inherit the restaurant. Look at her. She's so smart and sensible. How is she worse than a boy? Why do you have to be so biased towards boys? As a woman, didn't you manage the restaurant very well as well? Hongcha 866. Chapter 419. Jiang Rulin raised her voice. It's because I'm a woman that I understand how difficult it is to be a strong woman. Nyonyo is very clever, but I don't think she can inherit the family business. Her personality is not suitable at all. After saying so much, you just don't want to give me a grandson, right? Lin Shihao's expression was very ugly. He gritted his teeth and said, Mom, when Siki gave birth to Nyonyo, she almost lost her life. What did you say outside the delivery room? You said that you hoped that Bodhisattvas would bless Siki and her child. You also said that it was enough for us to have one child and that you would never let Siki give birth again. You may have forgotten these words, but I haven't. I will never forget how dangerous the situation was at that time. I almost lost the woman I loved the most. Mom, I made the decision not to have any more children. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Please don't make things difficult for Siki in the future. Jiang Rulin was stunned and suddenly burst into tears. Her cries echoed in the room. Fortunately, the room was soundproof. Yi Siki and her daughter, who were eating quietly in the dining room, did not hear her. Lin Shihao sighed silently, pulled out a tissue and handed it to her. Mom, is a grandson really that important? So important that you have to give up the harmony of the family and your most beloved granddaughter? Jiang Rulin's mood was very complicated. On one hand, she felt that she had gone overboard. On the other hand, she felt sad that her son and daughter-in-law could not understand her pain. She snatched the tissue from her son's hand and wiped her tears. She said sadly, Why did I work so hard for so many years? Wasn't it to lay a foundation for you? It's fine if you and Siki don't want to inherit the family business. I can still hold on for a few more years. However, it can't be that no one will inherit the family business until the third generation. Mom, look, we're back to square one. If you were willing to let Nyonyo inherit the family business, wouldn't everything be fine? Lin Shihao stroked her back to help her breathe. His voice was gentle. Mom, you're a little off today. Did something happen at the restaurant? In the past, even if Jiang Rulin made things difficult for Siki, she would not go too far, let alone in front of Nyonyo. After venting her anger, Jiang Rulin felt a lot better. She said in a bad mood, Yesterday I was drinking tea with a few acquaintances. They joked and asked me not to work so hard. After all, no matter how much I earned, my son wouldn't be willing to inherit the family business. Another one said that they just had a grandson and invited me to their 1-month-old celebration in a few days. It turned out that he was provoked by someone else. Lin Shihao said helplessly, Mom, those acquaintances you're talking about, aren't they those rich ladies? They don't have anything to do except go shopping or do beauty treatments. Why don't you ask them how many prostitutes their husbands have outside? How many of their children will be successful? Every family had its own difficulties. Lin Shihao had heard her mention a few rich ladies who had a good relationship with her before. He had also heard a little about their family matters. After hearing his reminder, Jiang Rulin felt much better. She muttered, That's true. All 4 of their husbands have mistresses outside. One of them has a very successful son who has started his own company. As for the other 3, let's not talk about them. There was no way to talk about the other 3. 2 of them had sons of rich playboys who were disobedient and always caused trouble. Another one only had a daughter. Her husband had a son with a prostitute and brought him home. The illegitimate son was always against her. Compared to this, his worries were nothing. Jiang Rulin sighed. Lin Shihao smiled and said gently, Mom, you must be hungry. Siki made your favorite dishes. He took a tray from the bedside table and placed it in front of her. The aroma of the food wafted into her nose. Jiang Rulin suddenly felt a little hungry. She hesitated for a moment and said, Let's go out and eat. Okay. Lin Shihao's smile widened. Yi Siki and Nyonyo were eating. When they heard the door close, they both looked up. Lin Shihao walked in front with the tray while Jiang Rulin walked behind him. Yi Siki quickly stood up and smiled. Mom, the food is cold. I'll heat it up. Grandma, Nyonyo put down her chopsticks. She sat up straight and looked at Jiang Rulin timidly. Jiang Rulin's heart ached a little. She smiled and sat beside her. She said gently, "Nyonyo, what do you want to eat? Grandma will get it for you." Nyonyo blinked and said carefully, "Grandma, will you still like me?" "Of course I will. Grandma likes our Nyonyo the most." Jiang Rulin hugged her and said gently, "Nyonyo, Grandma was so angry that she became muddle-headed. No matter if Nyonyo is a boy or a girl, you will still be Grandma's favorite child." "Thank you, Grandma." The child's troubles came and went quickly. Nyonyo smiled brightly. It was so dazzling that Jiang Rulin's eyes ached. She smiled and ruffled Nyonyo's hair. "Okay, baby. Can we eat in Gigai now?" "Yes, yes." Nyonyo nodded vigorously. As usual, she obediently put food on her mother's plate. "Grandma, Mommy's fish is delicious. Have some fish." "Okay, okay." Nyonyo is so obedient. Jiang Rulin's smile became even brighter when she saw how obedient and adorable Nyonyo was. "Mom, have some soup." Yi Siki brought out the reheated soup. She filled half a bowl and placed it in front of Jiang Rulin. "Okay," Jiang Rulin said mildly. "You should eat too. You've been busy all morning." Yi Siki smiled and agreed. Nyonyo was very good at making people happy. She talked about the interesting things that happened at school and quickly livened up the atmosphere at the dinner table. Lin Shihao looked at his mother, who was grinning from ear to ear, and then at his daughter, who was like a happy fruit. Finally, his gaze fell on Yi Siki. Yi Siki also turned to look at him. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. The family of three stayed at Jiang Rulin's place for dinner before returning home. Nyonyo was sleepy as soon as she got home and wanted to sleep. Yi Siki helped her take a bath and carried her to bed to rest. After she and Lin Shihao washed up, she also lay on the bed. She leaned into his arms and whispered, "Hubby, why don't we have another child?" Lin Shihao hugged her tightly. "I've already persuaded Mom. She probably won't force us anymore." She shook her head. "This is not a long-term plan." He lifted her face and said seriously, "Wifey, you know that I won't let you put yourself in danger again." When she gave birth to Nyonyo, he also went into the delivery room. Of course, he was not there to deliver her, but to accompany her during the delivery. He watched as she had a difficult labor, watched as she wailed in pain, and watched as her blood stained the bedsheets. He was so anxious that he almost went crazy. The fear that he felt at that time was still fresh in his mind. She smiled. "This time I can have a C-section. A C-section will also harm your body. It's enough for us to have Nyonyo as our child." He stroked the hair by her ear and said gently, "Wifey, now that you've started working again, it's time for you to realize your dream. Don't think about the child anymore. As for Mom, I'll talk to her." When it came to work, she began to hesitate. If she had another child, she would have to return to her position as a housewife. When the child grew up and she could start working again, she would also be old. However, when she thought about his mother's attitude towards her in the past few years, in short, she was in a dilemma. Bai Meiwei did not give up after her second date was ruined. Soon she started on her third date. It was Christmas Day. She deliberately chose this holiday to ruin Lin Shihao's reunion with his family. When Lin Shihao found out that she was going on a date on Christmas Day, he did not treat her well. He had originally planned to take his wife and child to the circus to watch a performance, but because of her, he could only change the date. Also, he really did not want to lie to Siki again. Every time he lied to her, his heart was filled with guilt. On Christmas Day, when Yi Siki received Lin Shihao's call and heard that he had changed shifts with his colleague and needed to work overtime, she had a bad feeling. Bai Meiwei started to act again. 2 days ago, Lin Shihao had said that he would take her and Nyonyo to watch a circus performance. Why did he suddenly change shifts with his colleague? As expected, an hour later, the tracker gave her the answer. It was a high-class Western restaurant. There was an endless stream of people and carriages on the streets. A Christmas tree decorated with stars stood at the entrance of the restaurant. Children were waving light sticks in their hands in the night sky. A young couple was walking towards them. The boy was holding a large plush toy in his hands, and the girl was holding a bouquet of fiery red roses. The two of them were holding hands sweetly. There were also many families of 3 walking on the bustling streets, leaving behind a string of laughter. Yi Siki and Xiao Tianxing stood outside the restaurant. Through the glass window, they looked at the couple shrouded in candlelight. Lin Shihao was wearing the sweater she had bought for him. His perfect side profile looked extremely charming under the soft candlelight. Sitting opposite him, Bai Meiwei was wearing a white dress. She was slim and elegant, like a blooming snow lotus. Her eyes were smiling and she looked very gentle. Yi Siki suddenly felt very uncomfortable. She felt like her heart was being pricked by needles. She quickly turned her head and turned her back to the glass window. Xiao Tianxing walked to her side. What's wrong? She lowered her head and did not answer. Are you feeling uncomfortable? Xiao Tianxing put his hand on her shoulder and tried to turn her head. But the moment his hand touched her shoulder, he felt that she was trembling slightly. She still refused to turn her head. Her voice was hoarse as she said, Forget it. I don't want to go in anymore. Please take me home. Xiao Tianxing slowly retracted his hand and sneered, You can't take such a small grievance? How are you going to defeat Bai Meiwei? Yi Siqi's shoulders trembled violently. She suddenly turned around and said loudly, Yes, I can't take it anymore. I'm useless. I can't compare to that woman. I'm not playing this game anymore. I'm F*King not playing it anymore. Big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. Under the streetlights, her eyes were filled with sorrow and despair. She clutched her handbag tightly and turned to run. Xiao Tianxing was stunned. He rushed out and chased after her. Beauty novel Hongcha 866. Chapter 420. This section of the street was paved with bluestone. Wearing high heels, she stumbled as she ran. Several times she almost hit passers-by. Xiao Tianxing chased after her, calling her name loudly. Not only did she not stop, but she ran even faster, as if she had exhausted all the strength of her life. At the entrance of the florist, a man came out with a bouquet of fresh flowers. The man was so focused on looking at the flowers that he did not notice Yi Siqi running towards him. The two of them crashed into each other. Bang! The flowers were thrown into the air and slowly fell to the ground. The petals scattered all over the ground. Yi Siqi fell pathetically on the street where the snow had just melted. One of her high heels was on her feet and the other was beside the man. She covered her mouth with the back of her hand and cried loudly. Miss, are you okay? The man's body only swayed a little, but he quickly steadied himself. He went forward helplessly and wanted to help her up. An arm suddenly pulled him away. Then a tall figure suddenly appeared and bent down to help Yi Siqi up from the ground. He frowned deeply on his handsome face. Yi Siqi, how are you? Are you hurt? Yi Siqi looked at Xiao Tianxing with tears in her eyes and shook her head. Xiao Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the man holding the flowers. Please help me get her shoes. The man was stunned and hurriedly picked up Yi Siqi's shoes. Xiao Tianxing held Yi Siqi's waist with one hand and took the shoes from him with the other. He bent down and helped her put them on. The man said apologetically, Miss, I'm sorry. I didn't notice you coming from that direction. Yi Siqi had not calmed down yet. Xiao Tianxing held her waist and answered for her, It's okay. She's in the wrong too. How much did you spend? I'll pay you back. It's okay. I'll just buy another bouquet. Merry Christmas. The man smiled kindly. Xiao Tianxing nodded slightly. Merry Christmas. The man picked up the roses on the ground and threw them into the trash can before walking back into the flower shop. Xiao Tianxing looked down at Yi Siqi's feet. Can you walk? Yi Siqi grabbed his arm and choked out, Give me 1 minute. Xiao Tianxing accompanied her under the street lamp. Her head was lowered, and her shoulders were trembling rapidly. He placed his right hand on her waist and raised his chin slightly. He looked into the distance, giving her some space to calm herself down. Let's go. Her voice was slightly nasal as she turned to leave. He didn't say anything and didn't ask anything. He put his hands in his pockets and quietly followed behind her. Jingle bells were playing everywhere on the bustling streets. The cheerful music brought out the festive atmosphere. She was surrounded by couples holding hands. She shuttled through the crowd expressionlessly like a floating island. When she reached the high-class restaurant, she couldn't help but stop to take a look. The seat by the window had been replaced by another couple. Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei were nowhere to be seen. Xiao Tianxing stood beside her in silence. She looked at the unfamiliar couple and slowly said, He said he loves me and I can feel that he still loves me. But why does he still want to maintain an ambiguous relationship with another woman? Xiao Tianxing, tell me, what are all men thinking? Xiao Tianxing turned to look at her. Under the light, her face was pale and her eyes were sad. Made him feel bad. For the first time, he didn't want to hurt her with the cruel truth. Instead, he told a lie that even he didn't believe. Perhaps Bai Meiwei used her father, the hospital director, to threaten him. He was forced. Yi Siqi grinned. Xiao Tianxing, where did your eyes go? Xiao Tianxing said lazily, The more unbelievable it is, the more likely it is to be the truth. In my opinion, Bai Meiwei would definitely do such a thing. She shook her head. She couldn't be bothered with him anymore. Actually, she also had a so-called truth in her heart. Although Lin Shihao loved her, he couldn't give up on external temptation at the same time. The couple in the restaurant. The man held a ring in his hand and carefully put it on his girlfriend's finger. He was serious and sincere. Yi Siki couldn't help but recall the time when Lin Shihao proposed to her. It was also winter. They were skiing at the ski resort. He held her hand and slid down from the top of the mountain. Then, he knelt on one knee in the white snow with a ring in his hand and asked her if she was willing to marry him. He said, "Siki, I love you. Let me take care of you for the rest of your life." At that time, she was blinded by love and didn't hold back at all. She threw herself into his arms and said loudly, "I do." He smiled and hugged her, spinning in circles in the snow. Snowflakes suddenly floated in the sky. It was the most beautiful snow she had ever seen. The empty valley echoed with their laughter. She didn't know how long she stood there for, but the courage she had lost gathered bit by bit. She really couldn't give up on the man she loved so deeply. She bravely turned around and grinned at Xiao Tianxing. "It seems like tonight's plan has gone down the drain." Xiao Tianxing's deep eyes warmed and the corners of his lips curved. "Who said so? Don't forget that we still have the universal tracker." Her smile faded and she looked serious. "I yelled at you just now. I'm sorry." He shrugged. "Did you yell at me? Why don't I remember?" She smiled and said in a light tone, "Let's go and see where they've gone." In the area of Times Square, there were many high-end clothing brand stores with exquisite and luxurious decorations. In one of the branded women's boutique stores, Lin Shihao was sitting in the rest area, flipping through a magazine in boredom. He raised his wrist to look at the time and frowned slightly. "Shihao, do I look good in this?" A pair of high heels appeared in front of him. He looked up. Bai Meiwei was wearing a sexy low-cut dress with a gentle smile on her face. She twirled in front of him and asked gently, "Do I look good?" He said indifferently, "Not bad." Bai Meiwei said coquettishly, "I tried on 5 clothes and you said they were not bad. Which one is better?" He said indifferently, "They're all not bad." She pouted and said coquettishly, "You didn't look at them seriously at all." He lowered his head to read the magazine and said coldly, "You're asking for more and more." Okay. Don't be angry. Wait for me for a while. I'll go in and change. I'll be out soon." She could hear the dissatisfaction in his voice and didn't dare to push him too hard. Lin Shihao was a little frustrated as he listened to the sound of the high heels walking away. He couldn't read the contents of the magazine at all. He turned on his phone but there were no messages or calls. He wondered how Siki and Nyonyo spent Christmas. Thump thump. The sound of high heels came from behind him and stopped at a certain spot. A familiar voice said, "Miss, please help me get that dress." Lin Shihao turned around abruptly. Siki was standing not far away. She was wearing a red coat with the buttons unbuttoned. She was wearing a white sweater and a short black skirt. Her eyes were smiling as she looked at the salesperson who was helping her get the dress. The salesperson took down the dress from the display window and handed it to her with a smile. "Miss, please follow me. The fitting room is over there." Lin Shihao's heart tightened and cold sweat broke out on his back. If Siki were to walk towards the fitting room, she would definitely pass by him. He felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. His brain was working furiously as he tried to think of a solution. The sound of high heels was getting closer and closer to him. He couldn't help but clench his fists. Suddenly, a voice was heard and Yi Siki stopped in her tracks. "Siki, it's really you? It's Xiao Tianxing. Why is it him again?" Lin Shihao's nerves were tense and he was on high alert. Yi Siki turned around and smiled. "Chief Xiao, you're here too." She really admired Xiao Tianxing. It was such a waste that he didn't go into acting. Of course, she also admired herself. 2 minutes ago, they were still observing Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei from outside the display window of this clothing store. 2 minutes later, they were greeting each other politely as if they were friends who had just met by chance. Xiao Tianxing casually glanced at the lounge. That person was sitting with her back facing them. He could only see the top of her head. He smiled meaningfully. "It's Christmas today. Your husband is shopping for clothes with you?" Yi Siki's tone was slightly awkward. "No, my husband is working overtime tonight. I came out alone." Xiao Tianxing frowned unhappily. "Your husband is really a workaholic. He even left you and your mother alone on a day like this." She stroked the hair by her ear and smiled gently. "Actually, you can't blame him. He's a doctor. His profession is special. How can he rest whenever he wants?" Xiao Tianxing didn't seem to agree with her. He shook his head, but he didn't want to dwell on this topic. His gaze fell on her hand. The color of that dress doesn't suit you. Try this one. He casually picked up a dress. It was the one that Bai Meiwei had tried on earlier. Yisiki said awkwardly, This seems too sexy. Xiao Tianxing chuckled. The V-neck design will make your neck look slender and your waist slim. It'll outline the curves of your waist very well. You'll definitely look good in it. She pursed her lips in embarrassment. I rarely wear such revealing clothes. It's precisely because of this that you have to try it on. You have the capital to be beautiful, so you have to boldly display it. If you don't dress up when you're young, who will appreciate you when you're old? Xiao Tianxing tried his best to recommend it to her. Lin Shihao couldn't help but look back. His face immediately darkened. That was the dress that Bai Meiwei had tried on earlier. It was indeed very revealing. Imagining his wife standing in front of other men in such a revealing dress, Lin Shihao's heart was filled with jealousy. He couldn't hold it in anymore. He stood up and strode over to them. Under Yisiki's surprised gaze, he put his arm around her shoulders and forced her to lean into his arms. He used his actions to declare his possession of her. Yisiki was shocked. Hubby. Why are you here? Lin Shihao's face darkened. He didn't answer her question. His sharp eyes stared at Xiao Tianxing's calm face. He said coldly, Mr. Xiao, I'll take my wife and leave first. Goodbye. After saying this, he didn't care about Bai Meiwei anymore. He directly put his arm around Yisiki's shoulder and walked out. Yisiki was dragged away by him. She awkwardly turned around to say goodbye to Xiao Tianxing. President Xiao, I'm sorry. We'll be leaving first. Xiao Tianxing raised his eyebrows in amusement. He made an okay gesture with his right hand. Bai Meiwei, who was in the fitting room, was about to explode in anger. She had overheard the conversation between Yisiki and Xiao Tianxing and knew that they had also come to this store. She really wanted to rush out of the fitting room immediately and drag Lin Shihao to Yisiki to show off in front of her. She wanted to provoke and hurt her. She didn't expect that the more anxious she was, the more mistakes she made. When she was changing clothes, her hair actually got stuck in the zipper. She was anxious and in pain. She pulled at the zipper for a long time but still couldn't get her hair out. When she heard that Lin Shihao had dragged Yisiki away, she was so anxious that she stomped her feet. She gritted her teeth, steeled her heart, and pulled out a few strands of hair that were stuck in the zipper. When she ran out of the store with her hair in a mess, she happened to see Lin Shihao driving past her. Bai Meiwei was in an extremely sorry state at this moment. She didn't have time to put on her coat and was only wearing a sweater skirt. Her hair was messy and her body was stiff as she stood outside the door. Her hands were tightly clenched into fists, and her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared in the direction that the car had disappeared in. A sneer came from the side. Bai Meiwei trembled slightly. Xiao Tianxing had both hands in his pockets as he leaned against his car. His handsome face was filled with undisguised mockery, and his eyes were filled with mockery. He said lazily, You don't want to be a rich young miss, but you insist on being a mistress of a married man. Why are there so many cheap women in this world? His magnetic voice was pleasant to the ears, but the words that came out of his mouth were like knives that pierced her heart. Bai Meiwei's entire body trembled and her face turned pale. Bam! The car door slammed shut, and Xiao Tianxing's flashy Ferrari sped away. The night wind blew against her face and it was bone-piercing cold. Bai Meiwei was only wearing a sweater, but she didn't feel cold at all. At this moment, the coldness in her heart had already covered everything else. She stood there in a daze for a long time. She instinctively protected her abdomen, and a look of determination slowly appeared in her eyes. She couldn't give up. Even if it was for the sake of her child, she couldn't be defeated so easily. Hatred grew in her heart. Yisiki, you forced me to do this. Since you're not willing to let go, then don't blame me for being ruthless. On the way home, Lin Shihao's expression was ugly, and he didn't speak the entire time. Yisiki didn't want to speak either. She turned her head to look at the bright lights outside the window. Her body was a little cold even though the car was air-conditioned. When she opened the door, the living room was pitch black. It was a little cold and there was no festive atmosphere at all. Yisiki changed into slippers, hung her coat on the floor hanger, and went straight back to her room. Lin Shihao glanced at her back. After hanging up his coat, he walked towards his daughter's room. Nyo was fast asleep. Her body was curled up under the blankets, and only her small face was exposed. Lin Shihao sat by the bed. He caressed her face and placed the gift he had prepared in advance on her bedside. When he returned to the bedroom, Yisiki was already lying on the bed. Her back was facing him and she was curled up into a ball. He lay down beside her, took out a necklace from his pocket, and carefully put it around her neck. He kissed her hair. "Merry Christmas, my wife." Siki lowered her eyes to look at the necklace. It was a heart-shaped pendant and it was very beautiful. She rubbed the pendant with her fingers and closed her eyes tiredly. She didn't want to speak. She was afraid that once she opened her mouth, she wouldn't be able to resist questioning him. Powerful novel Hongcha 866. Chapter 421. Lin Shihao originally thought that Siki would ask him why he was in the clothing store. He was even prepared to tell her the truth, but he didn't expect her to just keep her back to him and remain silent. If she didn't ask, he really wouldn't have the courage to say those words. He comforted himself in his heart that they had already gone on 3 dates. As long as he could endure the next 2, he could get by Mei Wei to abort the child and cut off all contact with her. Soon he wouldn't have to lie to Siki anymore. He would love her even more to make up for the hurt he had caused her. Lin Shihao held this thought and hugged Siki very tightly, as if he was afraid that she would run away. Bai Mei Wei stood outside the clothing store for more than half an hour in thin clothes. That night she caught a cold and had a fever. For the next few days she asked for leave to rest at home. Without her in the hospital, Lin Shihao felt much more comfortable. His nerves, which had been tense for the past few days, also relaxed a little. However, he didn't know that Bai Mei Wei wasn't the kind of person to give up so easily. She was already secretly planning a plan B. Leisurely Blue Ocean Life Spa. As a high-class club, this was a paradise for rich madams and rich Mississippi. There was a full range of services inside, such as baths, full-body massages, face makeup, detoxification, weight loss, and so on. Jiang Rulin was a regular here and knew many of the rich madams. No matter which beauty program she did, she would meet 1 or 2 old acquaintances and chat with them in full swing. When she was doing the fish treatment, a young and beautiful girl walked into the pool and sat beside her. She nodded politely. "Hello." The girl's young skin was full of vitality. Her smile was gentle and had an intellectual charm. Jiang Rulin was infected by her smile and responded with a smile. "Miss, you must be new. I don't think I've seen you before." "Yes, I'm Bai Mei Wei. I just transferred here from DZ." Bai Mei Wei's delicate and beautiful smile became even more charming. "Big sister, what's your surname?" Jiang Rulin laughed. "My surname is Jiang. You should call me auntie. I don't dare to be called big sister. My granddaughter is 7 years old this year." Bai Mei Wei's beautiful eyes widened, revealing an expression of disbelief. "Really? I thought you were only in your 30s. I'm already in my 50s. Jiang Rulin couldn't stop smiling. Every woman liked to be praised for being young and beautiful. Bai Mei Wei exclaimed, "I really can't tell. How do you usually take care of yourself? You don't mind letting me learn from you, do you?" "Of course I don't mind. When it comes to maintenance, I really don't know much. Usually, I just strengthen my exercise, do some beauty treatments, do some tonics." Women at Jiang Rulin's age all liked to chat with others and tell others about their own experiences. To put it simply, they were good teachers. Bai Mei Wei deliberately tried to please her, and the topics she picked were things that she was interested in. The more they talked, the more congenial they became. They even picked the same beauty program so that it would be convenient for them to continue talking. "Auntie Jiang, I think the most important thing for a woman to do is to take care of her body from the inside. A woman's figure, complexion, and spirit are all inseparable from her ovaries. Especially a woman over the age of 30, she must pay attention to taking care of her ovaries." Jiang Rulin smiled and said, "You're absolutely right. Mei Wei, a real person doesn't show off. You know a lot." Bai Mei Wei said softly, "I've embarrassed myself in front of you. I'm a gynecologist and I only know these theoretical things. When it comes to practical maintenance, how can I compare to you?" "Oh, what a coincidence. My son is also a gynecologist." "Mei Wei, which hospital do you work in? Who knows, you might even be in the same hospital as my son." Bai Mei Wei smiled and said, "I work in the city's People's Hospital." Jiang Rulin was full of smiles. "I was right. You two work in the same hospital. His name is Lin Shihao. You should know him, right?" Bai Mei Wei's expression changed slightly. She smiled unnaturally and said, "I know him. Dr. Lin is the director of our gynecology department. He's also my senior." Jiang Rulin noticed that her expression was a little off and asked with concern, "What's wrong? Did something happen at work between you two?" No, Bai Mei Wei was a little anxious. She seemed to realize that she was too anxious and quickly squeezed out a smile. Auntie, my senior usually takes care of me and I respect him very much. We're very good really. Jiang Rulin looked thoughtfully at her nervously clenched fists and smiled. That's good. Bai Meiwei quickly changed the topic. Auntie, when we were talking about ovary maintenance, I know a brand of nutritional products that are very good. My mother takes that product. You can give it a try. Sure. What's the name? The atmosphere returned to normal. The two of them spent half a day at leisurely Ocean Blue. Jiang Rulin invited Bai Meiwei to her restaurant. The two of them drank some tea and ate some vegetables in the private room. They agreed to go shopping the next day. The next day, Bai Meiwei twisted a paper bag. Inside it was a gift she had specially prepared for Jiang Rulin. She smiled and took out the gift. Auntie Jiang, this is the nutritional product I told you about yesterday. After my mother took it, the effect was very good. I brought a few boxes for you. Try it first. If you think it's effective, I'll buy more for you. How can I accept this? These nutritional products are not cheap. I'd better give you the money. Jiang Rulin had checked this nutritional product last night. It was imported from abroad and was more difficult to buy in the country. Moreover, it was expensive. Bai Meiwei pouted coquettishly. You're too polite. If you say that, I'll be embarrassed to interact with you in the future. Jiang Rulin was also a generous person and did not like to take advantage of others. She thought that she would give her some gifts in the future to make up for it, so she accepted it graciously. She smiled and praised her. Thank you, Meiwei. Whoever marries such a beautiful and sensible girl like you is really lucky. Auntie, I'm embarrassed by your praise. Bai Meiwei smiled a little awkwardly. It's just a pity that the person I like doesn't like me. That's because he doesn't have good taste. You'll definitely be able to find a good man in the future. Jiang Rulin smiled and comforted her. The two of them went shopping together. Bai Meiwei chose a jacket for Jiang Rulin. Jiang Rulin liked it very much and repeatedly praised Bai Meiwei for having good taste. After the two of them finished shopping, they went to do their hair and drank afternoon tea. Jiang Rulin liked Bai Meiwei more and more. She felt that she had good taste, knowledge, and knew how to respect others. Moreover, she knew how to listen to others. Jiang Rulin could not help but confide in Bai Meiwei some of her inner thoughts. For example, her son and daughter-in-law were not willing to give her any more grandchildren, and she was worried that she would not have an heir in the future. Bai Meiwei comforted her softly. She did not say anything bad about Lin Shihao and his wife, nor did she pick on her mistakes. What she said was reasonable and considerate. It made Jiang Rulin's heart feel indescribably warm, and her good impression of her improved a little. Jiang Rulin realized that when she mentioned her son, Lin Shihao, Bai Meiwei seemed a little off. She could not pinpoint what was wrong, but she secretly made a note of it in her heart. She planned to find an opportunity to ask her son if there was any conflict between him and Bai Meiwei. Lin Shihao was about to get off work when he suddenly received a call from his mother. She went straight to the point and said, "Shihao, do you have a colleague named Bai Meiwei? Is there some misunderstanding between you and her?" Lin Shihao was walking out of the hospital when he heard this. His footsteps froze and he was silent for 2 seconds before he asked, "Mom, how did you meet her?" "I met her 2 days ago at the spa. I think she's a very nice person. Colleagues should get along well. Don't bully her." Lin Shihao frowned. "Mom, what did she say to you? Are you afraid that she'll say bad things about you in front of me? She's not that kind of person. Instead, she praises you and says that you take good care of her. She respects you a lot. But I can tell that she seems to have something she can't say. Aren't you being too strict with her?" Lin Shihao helplessly pinched his forehead. "Mom, don't make wild guesses. There's no such thing." "Really? Really?" Although Jiang Rulin guessed wrongly, it was enough to make Lin Shihao vigilant. How could Bai Meiwei coincidentally be at the same spa as his mother? Could she have done it on purpose? Thinking of this possibility, Lin Shihao frowned. After he got into the car, he dialed Bai Meiwei's number. Bai Meiwei had taken a few days off on the grounds that she was sick. These few days many colleagues called to show concern for her, but Lin Shihao was not among them. When she saw the caller ID, her heart couldn't help but beat faster. A sweet smile appeared on her face as she said softly, "Senior, what's the matter?" She thought that he would show concern for her, but unexpectedly he asked, "Aren't you sick? Why are you still in the mood to go to the spa? Did you already know that my mother was at that spa?" Bai Meiwei bit her lip. Her voice sounded extremely aggrieved. "Senior, I've been sick for so many days. It's fine that you didn't call to show concern, but why did you have to say such hurtful words to me? I'm not feeling well right now, so I don't want to talk anymore. If there's anything, let's talk at the hospital tomorrow. Without waiting for his reply, Bai Meiwei ended the call. Lin Shihao punched the steering wheel. Bai Meiwei threw her phone aside and sat in front of the vanity mirror. Looking at the expressionless face in the mirror, she felt bitter. When did she become someone who couldn't even recognize herself? She felt like she had lost something important inside her. But what could she do? For that person, for her child, she was willing to give up that part of herself, even if it became more and more unfamiliar and cruel. Lin Shihao, do you know how much I love you? Can't you just love me a little? Bai Meiwei covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling slightly. The next day, Bai Meiwei went to the hospital. In the morning, she and Lin Shihao were very busy and didn't have time to talk. When it was time for lunch, Lin Shihao took her to the rooftop of the hospital. There were many white bedsheets and quilts drying on the rooftop. The two of them stood between the clotheslines, their bodies covered by the bedsheets, leaving only two faint shadows on the bedsheets. Bai Meiwei looked at the expressionless Lin Shihao and smiled slightly. Senior, what do you want to talk to me about? Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 422. Bai Meiwei looked at the expressionless Lin Shihao and smiled faintly. Senior, what do you want to talk to me about? The woman in front of him had exquisite makeup and a smile in her beautiful eyes. Even though she was wearing a white coat, her figure still looked graceful. She was still her, generous and beautiful, but not her. The Bai Meiwei of the past was cheerful and kind, not so scheming. Lin Shihao pursed his thin lips and said indifferently, Meiwei, you've changed. You've become so unfamiliar to me. You once promised me that you wouldn't destroy my family. Bai Meiwei's smile froze. I'm not destroying your family now. Lin Shihao's gaze darkened. I don't know what you said to my mother, but she's already suspicious of our relationship. Her face turned pale and her eyes widened in disbelief. You think I'm deliberately getting close to your mother? He looked at her coldly. Isn't that the case? She shook her head. Believe it or not, before I talked to Auntie Jiang, I really didn't know that she was your mother. There are still 2 more dates. After those 2 dates, you have to fulfill our promise and abort the child. During this time, please don't go near my family and don't say anything unnecessary. His cold attitude angered her. She laughed mockingly. Senior, don't you love your wife very much? Why don't you tell her that I'm pregnant with your child? What are you worried about? Are you worried that Yi Siki won't forgive you if she finds out the truth? Or are you worried that she'll divorce you? Bang! The metal door of the rooftop suddenly made a sound. A flurry of frantic footsteps could be heard in the corridor. The sound of high heels was like a hammer, pounding on Lin Shihao's heart. His heart pounded fiercely and he had a bad feeling. He suddenly pulled the blanket in front of him and rushed to the entrance of the rooftop. He saw a short-haired and pretty figure running down the corridor in a panic. It was Siki. Damn it, it was actually Siki. Lin Shihao's face turned pale and his back broke out in a cold sweat. He rushed downstairs and his heart was so flustered that it almost jumped out of his chest. Why was Siki here? Why was she here? Siki, Siki. Lin Shihao chased after her while shouting her name loudly. She had already run to the corner of the next flight of stairs. Hearing his shout, she raised her head to look at him. Her face was covered in tears, and her eyes were filled with grief and despair. Lin Shihao's heart suddenly ached and he anxiously called out, Siki, don't run. Listen to me. The usually calm and gentle man was completely panicked at this moment, and his voice was full of urgency and panic. Yi Siki looked at him resolutely. She did not listen to his advice and rushed to the entrance of the corridor. Coincidentally, there was an elevator on this floor. She rushed into the elevator and pressed the button to close the door without waiting for anyone else to come in. The elevator door slowly closed and the people who were locked outside could not help but complain. By the time Lin Shihao caught up, the elevator had already gone downstairs. Lin Shihao rushed to the entrance of the stairs again. By the time he ran downstairs, Yi Siki had already waved and got into a taxi, leaving a trail of dust behind. Just as he was about to chase after her, his phone suddenly rang. The head nurse's voice could be heard. Dr. Lin, the patient in bed 18 is looking for you. Lin Shihao's fingers clutched his phone tightly. His expression was ugly as he watched the taxi drive further and further away. His body stiffened on the spot like a statue. Yi Siki's daily working hours were short, and she was free to arrange her working hours, so she specially took advantage of her lunch break to have lunch with Lin Shihao. Originally, she wanted to give him a surprise, but she did not expect that he would not be in the office. She met the deputy director of the obstetrics and gynecology department, Li Donghao, in the corridor. Li Donghao told her that he saw Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei going to the top floor. She was puzzled and followed them. She did not expect to hear Bai Meiwei's words. At that moment, it was as if she had been struck by lightning. She was completely stunned and did not know what to do. The only thought in her mind was to leave that place, to leave Lin Shihao and Bai Meiwei. From the moment she got into the taxi, her tears did not stop. She shrank into the back seat and covered her mouth tightly, allowing her tears to wet her clothes. She sobbed softly like a pitiful little animal. Her heart and head hurt so much. The taxi driver glanced at Yisiki through the rearview mirror and sighed. She had just come out of the hospital and was crying so sadly. Something must have happened. Although he sympathized with her, he had to disturb her. "Miss, where are you going?" Yisiki shook her head with tears streaming down her face. She did not know. She also did not know where she should go. "Miss, why don't I take you home? Where do you live?" She cried and screamed, No, I don't want to go back." As long as she returned home, she would think of Lin Shihao and the various things that had happened between him and Bai Meiwei. She could not face that space that was filled with his scent. Okay. You don't want to go home." The taxi driver was already in his 50s. He had a gentle personality and did not show any signs of impatience. Instead, he comforted her gently, "Miss, in life, there is no obstacle that cannot be overcome. You have to think positively." She could not think positively because she was currently in a state of extreme sadness. Everything she saw was dim. Her mother-in-law was cold to her, her husband had an affair outside of marriage, and her mistress was pregnant and forced to abdicate. Each and every one of these things was like 3 huge mountains weighing down on her head. It made it hard for her to breathe and almost suffocate her. Her chest hurt terribly. Her eyes were also very sore and swollen. Tears continued to flow out of her eyes. Her cell phone suddenly rang. No matter who it was, she did not want to answer it. However, the caller seemed to be very patient or very anxious. He called again and again as if he would not give up as long as she did not answer. She huddled in a corner and did not even want to look at her cell phone. The taxi driver could not help but remind her, "Miss, your cell phone is ringing. What if it's something important? Important matters." What other important matters could there be at this moment? Yisiki was completely disheartened. She still refused to answer the phone. However, a crazy idea appeared in her mind. She wanted to leave this place and escape to a place where no one knew her. Her voice was hoarse and trembling. "Driver, go to the train station." Still no one answered. Lin Shihao's brows were tightly knitted together. After dealing with the patient, he immediately called Yisiki's cell phone. However, no one answered. He was very worried. He was worried that she would do something stupid. He did not care about anything else. He quickly changed his clothes, grabbed his car keys, and called the HR department to apply for leave as he sprinted to the car park. There were many people at the train station. Most of them were students and migrant workers who were going home for the holidays. Yisiki's cell phone rang again while she was queuing up to buy her ticket. This time, she took out her cell phone from her handbag. She glanced at the caller ID and immediately turned it off. Lin Shihao drove home. When he realized that Siki had not returned, he panicked even more. He called her company, but the HR department said that she had applied for leave. He then called his mother-in-law's house. "Mom, did Siki go to your place?" "No, it's okay. I heard her say that she wanted to go to your place yesterday, so I asked." "Okay, we're doing fine. I'll hang up first." After hanging up, Lin Shihao realized that there was no one to ask. Where did Siki go? Was she in danger? He was about to go crazy from anxiety. There was no point in staying at home. He simply drove to the streets to look for her. He went to the places where they had dated before, to her favorite restaurants and cafes, and even to Nyonyo's school. With each disappointment, his heart became heavier and heavier. His brows were tightly knitted together, and his expression was cold and ugly. Yisiki casually bought a ticket. They would leave in 20 minutes. She did not care about the destination at all. She just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. There were not many people on the train because this train was going to Lessa. She leaned against the sleeper bed and stared blankly at the passing scenery outside the window. The rumbling of the train filled her ears. She did not know when, but tears flowed down her face again. The scenery outside the window was a blur. After the train traveled for more than an hour, she gradually regained her senses. Nyonyo must be afraid of her sudden disappearance, right? She turned on her phone. There were many missed calls and unchecked text messages. They all came from one number, Lin Shihao. She did not check those text messages, nor did she want to call him back. Instead, she called her mother, Zhou Rongfang. She cleared her throat and tried to make her voice sound normal. Mom, I'm going on a business trip for a few days. Please take care of Nyonyo. You can bring Nyonyo home today. Zhou Rongfang asked worriedly, Siki Shihao just called me to ask if you're home. Did you two quarrel? Why doesn't he know about your business trip? Mom, we didn't quarrel. The company arranged for me to go on a business trip at the last minute. I haven't had the time to tell him yet. Don't worry, I'll tell him later. You really didn't quarrel? Siki dragged her words. Mom, we really didn't quarrel. I'm not lying to you. Don't worry about me. You and Dad take care of yourselves. When I come back from my business trip, I'll visit you too. Okay, you have to take care of yourself when you're alone. In Zhou Rongfang's opinion, her daughter and son-in-law had a very good relationship, so she did not suspect that her daughter was lying to her. She should also explain to the company. Otherwise, it would be too irresponsible of her. Siki sighed and called the Human Resources Department. She asked Chinyu for a leave of absence on the grounds that she was sick. After thinking about it, she sent a text message to Lin Shihao. I'm going to relax. Don't look for me. Nyonyo has already asked my mom to take care of her. After the text message was sent successfully, she immediately turned off her phone. She decided not to be disturbed by the outside world and to heal her wounded heart. After Lin Shihao saw the text message, he immediately called her back. However, her phone was already turned off. At least she was safe. He heaved a sigh of relief. However, the next second his chest swelled with pain. This was the first time she had spoken to him in such a harsh tone. His mind was filled with regret. He knew that she had such a resolute personality. He should not have kept it from her. He should have told her from the beginning. Things would not have developed to this point and hurt her so deeply. His heart was filled with uneasiness. He was afraid that she would leave him and never come back. Attention, Songshu 566. Chapter 423. The food on the train was not delicious. Siki had no appetite to begin with. She forced herself to eat a few mouthfuls, but they tasted like wax. She threw the rest of the food into the trash can. Unable to sleep at night, she opened the curtains. It was pitch black outside. Occasionally, when they passed by a small town, the dim lights were shrouded in a layer of mist. She seemed to be lost in the mist and did not know how to get out. When the train arrived at Lessa, it was already the third night. Siki was tired and found a hotel near the train station to check in. The hotel owner was very enthusiastic and said that in the highlands, one could not take a bath for too long. Otherwise, there would not be enough oxygen in the bathroom and one would faint due to lack of oxygen. He also said that if Siki felt dizzy or other altitude sickness, she must inform her in time. She would provide medicine for free. Siki gratefully said, "Thank you." In this season, the temperature in Lessa was very low. It was similar to a city, but it was drier than a city. At noon, the ultraviolet rays were stronger. Before Siki went out, the hotel owner advised her to drink more water and apply sunscreen to prevent her from getting sunburned. Siki smiled and said, "Thank you." Then she asked her where she could buy clothes. The hotel owner told her the name of a place and told her how to take the bus. Siki thanked her and went to the place where the hotel owner told her to buy a change of clothes and some daily necessities. This was the first time in her life that she had made such a reckless decision. She abandoned the people and things she cared about and came to a remote and unfamiliar place. It was not for faith, nor was it to enjoy the scenery. It was purely to escape. It was said that Tibet was the place closest to heaven. It was as if one could reach out and touch the blue sky. Siki wore snow boots, carried a canvas bag and wrapped a thick scarf around her. She walked slowly on this magical land. She saw many old nannies holding prayer wheels in their hands, smiling peacefully. She saw many Tibetans kowtowing, so pious that they were almost stubborn. She saw simple people laughing happily, singing songs that she did not understand. Her heart was cleansed by the snowy highlands and she gradually found peace. Siki bathed in the sunlight as she walked on the square of the Jokhang temple. She saw a familiar figure standing about 10 meters away from her. He was tall, handsome, and outstanding. He was still as carefree and unrestrained as ever. His hands were leisurely in his trouser pockets, the corners of his lips were raised, and his deep eyes carried a faint smile as he quietly gazed at her. Siki smirked and walked towards him. The smile in Xiao Tianxing's eyes widened. His voice was magnetic and gentle. "You seem to be doing well. It seems that I was worried for nothing." Siki smirked. "Why are you here?" He laughed teasingly. Of course I'm here for you. Did you think that I would abandon my wealth and glory to come here to be a monk? Yi Siki was slightly surprised. How did you know that I was here? Xiao Tianxing reached out and patted her head. Silly girl, there's a high-tech device called CPS positioning. Even if your phone is turned off, I can still locate your approximate location. When she did not come to work for 2 days and could not be contacted, he realized that something had happened. He asked an acquaintance in the mobile operator to retrieve her mobile phone location information. Of course, there were errors in this technology. Otherwise, it would not have taken him an entire day to locate her exact location. Yi Siki stared at him in a daze. His facial features were really good-looking. They were completely different from Lin Shihao's gentle and handsome style. He was more carefree and unruly, with an unruly arrogance that no one could control. However, at this moment he was exuding the same gentle aura as Lin Shihao. He patted her head with his palm, just like a big brother, considerate and warm. A very special feeling grew in the depths of her heart. She pursed her lips and asked softly, "Why did you come to look for me?" He chuckled. "I'm worried that some idiots will get lost and not be able to find their way home." Tears welled up in her eyes. She hurriedly looked down and laughed dryly. "Teacher Xiao, you're so good to me. I'm really flattered. It's good that you know. Let's go. Don't just stand here like a fool." Xiao Tianxing patted her shoulder. He brought her to a very quaint tea house. They sat by the window on the second floor, where they could see the bluestone pavement on the street below. The sunlight poured down on them, making them feel warm and comfortable. Xiao Tianxing leaned lazily against the soft cushion. He wrapped his arms around his shoulders, narrowed his eyes and said slowly, "Tell me honestly. What happened? Why did you suddenly come to Lessa?" Yi Siki took a sip of tea and smiled uncomfortably. "Teacher Xiao, can you not be so serious?" "I'm panicking." "I'm serious? I've already been very kind to you." Xiao Tianxing snorted threateningly. "Don't change the subject. Tell me the truth. This way, as your ally, I can give you advice." Yi Siki rubbed the porcelain cup with her fingers. The things that she had deliberately forgotten over the past few days had been brought out from a corner of her mind. That feeling was a little terrible. She said mildly, "Bai Meiwei is pregnant." Xiao Tianxing was drinking tea. He almost spat it out. He swallowed it awkwardly and coughed a few times. His handsome face was flushed red. Yi Siki burst out laughing. "Why are you more agitated than me?" She actually admired herself for being able to laugh. Xiao Tianxing rolled his eyes at her in annoyance. He calmed himself down and said, "Did your husband have sex with her again? That's not right. We've been following each other very closely recently." Hearing his straightforward words, the smile on Yi Siki's face froze again. "No, I'm guessing it was that night when they were drunk." Xiao Tianxing held his forehead with one hand and muttered softly, "The odds of winning the lottery are too high." Yi Siki knocked on the table with her finger. "You should at least restrain yourself a little. Don't agitate a victim like me anymore." He put down his hand and raised his eyebrows with a chuckle. "Some things won't disappear just because you try to cover them up. Yi Siki, don't be a coward. You should have the courage to face what you have to face." She smiled bitterly. "You make it sound so easy. Tell me, how should I face it?" Xiao Tianxing leaned forward with a serious expression. "There are 2 options. 1. Forgive Lin Shihao and persuade Bai Meiwei to abort the child. 2. Divorce Lin Shihao. Which option do you choose?" Yi Siki bit her lip. The child was in Bai Meiwei's womb. If she didn't want to, no one could force her to. Moreover, judging from their recent confrontations, she was more likely to use the child to threaten Lin Shihao into marrying her than to abort the bargaining chip. When she divorced Lin Shihao, when she first found out that he had cheated on her, she had thought about this plan, but in the end she lost to her love for him. This time, after being hurt by him so many times, could she still forgive him because of her love for him? Even if she forgave him for Nyonyo's sake, what about the child in Bai Meiwei's womb? Xiao Tianxing leaned forward again and said slowly, "After thinking about it for so many days, you still don't have an answer, right?" Yi Siki didn't answer. She lowered her eyes and bit her lip even harder. There was a faint taste of blood in her mouth. She heard the man in front of her sigh softly. His hand suddenly reached to her lips and pinched her chin. His voice was gentle as he said, "Stop biting. The skin is already broken. If someone sees this, they will think that I did something to you." Even at a time like this, he didn't forget to tease her. But her cold heart warmed slightly because of his words. His slightly rough fingertips gently rubbed against her lips, slowly wiping away the blood stains on her lips. He didn't seem to think that his actions were ambiguous at all. His expression was so serious and sincere, like a pilgrim on a pilgrimage. She actually felt embarrassed to push him away because that would only blaspheme his holiness at this moment. Her long eyelashes fluttered. She really wanted to return the favor with a grateful smile, but a teardrop fell from her eyes instead. His fingers slid to the corner of her eye, carefully wiping away her tears. In her blur, she saw a warm smile on his face. He said, "Yi Siki, if you're tired, come into my arms. I promise that I won't let you be sad." She cried and laughed. Her shoulders shook and her voice choked. "Xiao Tianxing, don't joke around." "I'm not joking. I'm serious." He paused, then said, "Yi Siki, I think I've already fallen for you." If it wasn't because he liked her, why would he have rushed all the way from City to Lessa? If it wasn't because he liked her, why would his heart ache when he saw her cry? This woman had already unknowingly touched his nerves. Yi Siki stared at him blankly. His expression was serious, and his deep eyes were like a whirlpool that wanted to suck her entire soul in. She shook her head frantically. "Xiao Tianxing, don't fall for me. I'm not worth it. Let's just be friends." He smiled gently. It was the first time she had seen such a gentle smile on his face. He said, "Silly girl, it's my business to like you. I won't force you to respond. Why are you so frantic?" Her tears flowed again. It was because she couldn't respond to him that she didn't want to hurt him. Her eyes were hazy with tears. "Xiao Tianxing, you're really a good person. You deserve a better woman. Shh, don't say any more." Xiao Tianxing placed a finger on her lips to stop her from continuing. He smiled. "If you feel troubled, forget what I said just now. We're still normal friends. Of course, if you feel tired, my arms will always be open to you no matter what your status is." If she wanted to be his friend, then so be it. If she was willing to accept him as her lover, then he would be her lover for life. He made this decision not because he didn't love her deeply enough, but because he didn't want to see her in a difficult position. He only wanted her to be happy. So you see, he didn't spend all these years in the field of love for nothing. He knew how to love someone better. "Yi Siki, what have you done to deserve such a man?" She looked at his smiling eyes, and her tears fell like rain. Awesome novel Songshu 566. Chapter 424. Xiao Tianxing was a man of his words. Since Yi Siki had made her choice, he would return to being her friend. After leaving the tea house, he acted as if he had forgotten that he had confessed to her. He teased her mercilessly. He glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. "When do you plan to go back and clean up the mess?" She had been away for a week and had cut off all contact with anyone. Her family was probably in a mess. She sighed helplessly. "The day after tomorrow. I want to relax for one more day." His lips curled up, but he didn't say anything. He accompanied her on this vast land just like two lonely souls. They didn't need to speak much, but they were tightly dependent on each other. Just as Yi Siki had guessed, the family was in a mess. Nyonyo stayed at her grandmother's house for a week. Daddy talked to her on the phone every day. Every time she asked when her mommy would be back from her business trip, Daddy would be silent for a moment and then comfort her that her mommy would be back soon. Nyonyo was already 7 years old. She was a very smart child. She felt that her mommy was not just on a business trip. Something seemed to have happened between her daddy and her mommy. One day she plucked up the courage to ask her grandmother if Daddy and Mommy had quarreled. Her grandmother was stunned. Then she smiled and patted her head. "Nyonyo, don't think too much. Your Daddy and Mommy are very close. How could they quarrel?" Since then she had never asked that question again. However, she still felt uneasy. Why wasn't her mommy back yet? Nyonyo was not the only one feeling uneasy. Yi Siki's mother, Zhou Rongfang, was also uneasy. Her daughter said that she was on a business trip and had not called for a week. This was not normal at all. Zhou Rongfang could not help but call Lin Shihao and ask him all the questions in her heart. "Shihao, tell me the truth. Did you quarrel with Siki? Her business trip was also fake. Did she run away from home? Otherwise, why hasn't she contacted us for so long?" Lin Shihao was speechless. He did not know how to explain it to her. "Shihao, say something." Lin Shihao's Adam's apple bobbed a few times. His voice was hoarse. "Mom, this is a little complicated. When Siki comes back, I will definitely give you an explanation. Mom, I still have a patient here. It's not convenient for me to say more. I'll hang up first." He hung up the phone in a panic. "Siki, where are you? Do you really have the heart to abandon me and Nyonyo?" He slumped against the back of the chair, facing the empty office. It was as if there was a big hole in his heart, and the cold wind blew in, making him feel cold all over. His phone suddenly rang. Jiang Ruolin. Shihao, why didn't you come back last week? Lin Shihao pinched the space between his eyebrows. Mom, I've been rather busy recently. Siki is also on a business trip. We'll go over to see you after we're done with our work. Jiang Ruolin sounded displeased. Siki is on a business trip? Did she start working again? When? Siki just started working less than a month ago. I didn't have the chance to tell you. Jiang Ruolin snorted. I think you deliberately hid it from me. Were you afraid that I wouldn't agree? Mom, okay, I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. Bring Nyonyo over in a few days. I miss her. Got it? After ending the call, Lin Shihao stared at the photo on his phone. In the photo, Siki was hugging Nyonyo and sitting on the lawn. The mother and daughter were smiling brightly. His eyes welled up with tears. He suddenly tightened his grip on his phone, stood up abruptly and rushed out of the office. Bai Meiwei's office happened to have no patients. He rushed in with a gloomy face. He grabbed her wrist and said in a low voice, "Come with me." "Where are we going?" Bai Meiwei was pulled up from the chair by him and stumbled out. Lin Shihao didn't answer. Ignoring the gazes of others, he grabbed her arm and walked out of the hospital. Li Donghao, the deputy director of the obstetrics and gynecology department, looked at their backs from the corridor. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose thoughtfully. Lin Shihao brought Bai Meiwei to the underground car park. He opened his car and spat out 2 words coldly, "Get in." Although she was full of questions, Bai Meiwei still obeyed and got in. The car drove out of the car park and quickly merged into the traffic on the street. He was driving at an extremely fast speed. His thin lips were tightly pursed, and his expression was extremely ugly. His entire body exuded a cold aura. Bai Meiwei was a little flustered. She grabbed onto the seatbelt and asked, "Senior, where exactly are you taking me?" Lin Shihao still didn't answer her. His deep and sharp eyes stared at the road ahead. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind, and that was to abort the child in Bai Meiwei's stomach. Only by doing so could he and Siki reconcile. Otherwise, everything would be ruined. The car stopped outside the maternity and child care hospital. Lin Shihao quickly got out of the car and opened the door for her. "Get out." The uneasiness in Bai Meiwei's heart grew. She clutched the seat belt and shook her head. "I'm not getting out of the car. Tell me first, what are we doing here?" Lin Shihao stared at her maliciously for a long time. Suddenly his lips curled. "What do you think we're doing here?" "Of course, we're accompanying you for your prenatal checkup." Bai Meiwei widened her eyes in disbelief. "Really?" His smile became gentle. "I'm the child's father. Isn't it natural for me to accompany you for your prenatal checkup? Hurry up and get out. I've already made an appointment with the doctor." Ever since she brought up the promise of 5 dates, he had been stingy and refused to smile at her. When she suddenly saw his gentle smile, the uneasiness in her heart quietly dissipated. Like a moth attracted to a flame, she held his right hand with her last bit of hope. He helped her out of the front passenger seat and smiled gently. "I've already thought about it. The child is innocent. I agree with you giving birth to it." Bai Meiwei's eyes stung and she almost cried. She held his hand tightly. "Senior, you're really willing to keep the child?" "Yes." He smiled, but there was no warmth in his deep eyes. Bai Meiwei didn't know that Yi Siki had run away from home. She thought that Yi Siki had finally decided to divorce Lin Shihao because of the blow. That was why Lin Shihao had changed his attitude towards her. She thought that she had finally achieved positive results. She was so happy that her eyes were brimming with hot tears. Holding his arm, she walked into the maternity and child care hospital with a heart full of joy. The doctor that Lin Shihao had contacted was called Tang Qingfeng. Tang Qingfeng was his best friend in university and lived in the same dormitory as him. The two of them were very close. When he found Tang Qingfeng and told him about his current situation and asked him for help, Tang Qingfeng almost bit off his own tongue. He stuttered for a long time before saying, "Old Lin Shihao, are you still the Lin Shihao I know? You actually betrayed Siki?" "Qingfeng, believe it or not, I've never thought of betraying Siki." Tang Qingfeng sighed. "If I do this, wouldn't I be letting Bai Meiwei down?" Lin Shihao's voice was cold. "If I can only keep Siki by hurting others, I won't hesitate. Qingfeng, if you don't want to get involved, I'll think of another way." Tang Qingfeng smiled bitterly. "Shihao, we've been good friends for so many years. How can I just watch you break up with Siki?" "Qingfeng, thank you. If anything happens, I'll take full responsibility. I won't implicate you. Lin Shihao was already prepared to cut off all means of retreat. Just like that, Lin Shihao and Tang Qingfeng made an appointment for the surgery. When Lin Shihao brought Bai Meiwei to Tang Qingfeng's office, he was already prepared. He gave Lin Shihao a look. Lin Shihao smiled and said to Bai Meiwei, "Meiwei, this is Dr. Tang. He'll examine you. I'll wait for you outside." Bai Meiwei grabbed his hand. "Stay with me." Lin Shihao's smile didn't change. He gently pushed her hand away. "I'll wait for you outside. Be good." It was the first time he spoke to her in such a doting tone. Her heart softened. She pursed her lips and smiled. "All right then. You have to wait for me." Lin Shihao smiled and nodded. Tang Qingfeng did the usual ultrasound for her. "Miss Bai, the child is very healthy. However, I still need to do a further examination on you. Please lie down on this bed." Bai Meiwei obeyed and lay down on the operating bed in the cubicle. She saw that the small operating room was fully prepared. The instruments were all used for an abortion. She was a little uneasy and her fingers tightened on the bedsheets. When Tang Qingfeng walked in, he changed into a surgical gown and put on a mask. He picked up a syringe of anesthetic and walked towards Bai Meiwei. Bai Meiwei suddenly felt her heart skip a beat. She jumped off the operating bed and took a few steps back. Her beautiful eyes stared at the syringe in his hand. "Is that an anesthetic in your hand?" It was the first time Tang Qingfeng had done such a thing. His forehead was covered in cold sweat and his voice was a little unnatural. "No, it's just an ordinary medicine." "No, I'm an obstetrician. You can't lie to me. This must be an anesthetic." Bai Meiwei retreated in panic. "What are you trying to do? Are you trying to abort the child in my stomach?" "No, Miss Bai. Don't be agitated. No, don't come over." As Bai Meiwei retreated, she bumped into the operating tray on the trolley. She casually grabbed a scalpel and held it to her neck. "Go away. I don't believe you. Whether it's a checkup or an operation, I don't need it. Go away." Tang Qingfeng's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He stared nervously at the scalpel in her hand and hurriedly took a few steps back. "Miss Bai, don't be agitated. Put down the scalpel first. We can talk about it." "I don't want to talk to you. You liar. You don't deserve to be a doctor." Bai Meiwei held the scalpel and approached the door step by step. Tang Qingfeng was humiliated by her scolding and had no strength to refute. He could only watch as she disappeared from his sight. Lin Shihao sat in the corridor. His face was cold but his heart was anxious. On one hand he was suffering from the torment of his conscience. On the other hand he was worried that he would not succeed. Just as he was suffering, the office door suddenly opened. Bai Meiwei walked out with a scalpel in her hand and an angry face. Attention Xingwu 799. Chapter 425. Lin Shihao stood up abruptly. His dark eyes were like a storm as he stared intently at the scalpel on her neck. Bai Meiwei walked up to him step by step. Her anger and sadness were intertwined. She stared at his face and said slowly, "Lin Shihao, I didn't expect you to be so cruel. I won't forgive you. Lin Shihao, I originally felt a trace of guilt in my heart. From now on, I won't hesitate anymore. I won't feel guilty anymore. Even if I have to resort to unscrupulous means, I will snatch you away." Lin Shihao clenched his fists and pursed his lips. "Meiwei, don't be rash. Put down the scalpel." She smiled miserably. "Let me tell you, if you want me to give up the child, I'll have to die." There were many patients waiting in the corridor. They had already noticed this scene and looked over curiously. Bai Meiwei ignored them and continued to place the scalpel on her neck. Step by step, she walked away from Lin Shihao's line of sight. Lin Shihao stood stiffly on the spot and watched her back disappear at the end of the corridor. Unknowingly, Tang Qingfeng was already standing beside him. He patted his shoulder and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry. I didn't do it." Lin Shihao shook his head. "It has nothing to do with you. From the beginning, I shouldn't have dragged you into this." From the moment he decided to deceive Bai Meiwei into performing the operation, he had abandoned his professional ethics as a doctor. If the plan had succeeded, he would have caused Tang Qingfeng to abandon his principles as a doctor. Bai Meiwei walked out of the hospital and threw the scalpel into the trash can. Her strong will collapsed in an instant. Her heart was beating wildly and her back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. She clenched her fists in fear. If she hadn't been vigilant, if she had been injected with anesthetics, then the child in her stomach would have disappeared. How could he be so cruel to her? Bai Meiwei's nose twitched and tears streamed down her face. She walked on the road with teary eyes, her chest filled with sorrow. She lowered her head and only cared about her sadness. She did not pay attention to what was in front of her. Suddenly she heard the sharp sound of a car horn. She hurriedly raised her head and saw a car driving over. It was getting closer and closer to her. She was so scared that she quickly retreated. Unexpectedly, someone was pushing a bicycle behind her. She happened to bump into that person. Bai Meiwei lay on the ground in agony. Her stomach was in so much pain that there was a warm current flowing out from her body, flowing along the inside of her thighs. She tried her best to suppress the panic in her heart and asked the people around her for help. "Please save me, save my child." The owner of the bicycle had already ridden away. Many people stayed far away, not wanting to get into trouble. A middle-aged woman couldn't bear it and went forward to take a look. She immediately screamed, "Oh my God, she's bleeding. Someone help me, send her to the hospital." The onlookers retreated. Bai Meiwei was both in pain and anxious. "Please, I beg you to help me. I will definitely thank you." The middle-aged woman sighed and did not care about anything else. She helped Bai Meiwei up from the ground. "Miss, don't be anxious. I'll send you to the hospital." Since no one was willing to help, she would just do it. Even if this girl relied on her, she would accept it. She could not just watch this girl lie on the ground and watch her lose her child. After all, the middle-aged woman was old and Bai Meiwei's right leg was twisted. It was very inconvenient for the two of them to walk. There were more and more bloodstains on the ground. A young woman could not stand it anymore and took the initiative to help support Bai Meiwei. The Women and Children's Hospital was less than 50 meters away. The two of them planned to send her to that hospital, but Bai Meiwei did not agree. She was worried that Tang Chengfeng would take the opportunity to abort her child. The middle-aged woman was extremely anxious. "Miss, your condition is very bad now. Why are you still choosing a hospital? Hurry, little girl, let's send her to the Women and Children's Hospital." The middle-aged woman and the young woman ignored Bai Meiwei's objections and sent her to the gynecology emergency room of the Women and Children's Hospital. Fortunately, Tang Chengfeng was not on duty. After a round of emergency treatment, the child was not saved in the end. Her uterus was not well developed, so it was easy for her to miscarry the child. Moreover, before her accident, she had been shocked and agitated, which had a certain impact. When Bai Meiwei heard the news, she fainted. When she woke up again, she touched her flat abdomen. Her tears were like broken beads, falling non-stop. As a gynecologist, she knew that it was almost impossible for her to have another child in the future. Her poor child was only 3 months old and it was gone just like that. Why was God so cruel to her? She covered herself with the blanket and cried bitterly. She rested in the hospital for an afternoon and calmed down a little. Then, she talked to the emergency doctor for more than half an hour and asked her to keep her miscarriage a secret. Bai Meiwei returned home that night. After thinking about it, she was unwilling to give up just like that. The child was gone and it was all Lin Shihao's fault. If he had not been so cruel, she would not have been so uneasy and had an accident. She blamed all the mistakes on him and she had even more reason to persevere. She lay on the bed, her pale face looking gloomy and terrifying. She smiled coldly, picked up her phone and called Jiang Rulin's number. After deliberately getting close to her some time ago, their relationship was now very good. Soon Jiang Rulin's gentle voice came through. "Meiwei, why did you suddenly think of calling me? What's the matter?" The coldness on Bai Meiwei's face faded, and it was replaced by a sobbing expression. She sobbed softly. "Any Jiang, I'm sorry. There's something that I've been hiding from you. Meiwei, don't cry. What happened?" She cried even more sadly. "Any Jiang, I can't say it. If I say it, you'll definitely think that I'm a bad woman and that I'm deliberately destroying your son's family." Jiang Rulin's heart thumped. "Meiwei, the matter you're talking about, don't tell me it has something to do with Shihao? Any, I'm sorry. If Senior hadn't forced me into a dead end, I definitely wouldn't have called you." Sob. Jiang Rulin's heart pounded. She said anxiously, "Meiwei, you're making me anxious. What happened? Tell me in detail." Bai Meiwei was crying her heart out. Jiang Rulin was anxiously stomping her feet on the other end of the phone. It wasn't easy to calm her down. She sobbed and said, 3 months ago, Senior and I attended a seminar. Senior drank too much, so I sent him to his room to rest. In the end, I wanted to resist, but he was too strong. I couldn't do anything." Jiang Rulin sat heavily on the sofa, her vision turning black. Her son, after drinking, actually raped Meiwei? Later I found out that I was pregnant. I originally wanted to abort the child, but my uterus was maldeveloped. If I aborted the child, I might not be able to be a mother for the rest of my life. So I begged Senior to let me give birth to the child. I swore that I would never destroy his family, but he wasn't willing. Today he tricked me into going to the hospital to abort the child. Fortunately, I found out in time and escaped. Jiang Rulin almost fainted. How could this be? Bai Meiwei sobbed. Annie Jiang, I beg you. You're the only one who can help me now. I beg you to persuade Senior to let me keep my son. Even if I give birth to the child, I won't destroy his family. Please believe me. Jiang Rulin's head buzzed. Her fingers trembled slightly. She was silent for a long time before she said, Meiwei, I'm very sorry that Shihao forced you. As for the child, let me think about it. Bai Meiwei sobbed. Thank you, Auntie Jiang. Jiang Rulin felt extremely guilty. It was clearly her son who hurt her, but this silly girl was still thanking her. She was so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. After ending the call, Jiang Rulin wanted to immediately run to Lin Shihao and question him. However, it was already late at night, so it was obviously not suitable. Moreover, she had to think about how to deal with the child in Bai Meiwei's stomach. The next day was Saturday. It was supposed to be a leisurely holiday, but for Jiang Rulin and Lin Shihao, it was the beginning of a war. Lin Shihao heard a knock on the door early in the morning. When he opened the door, he saw his mother standing at the door in a towering rage. He frowned. Mom, what's wrong with you? Jiang Rulin quickly changed her shoes and entered the room. She closed the door with a bang. She pointed at his nose and scolded, You brat, look at what wicked things you've done. She had never scolded him so harshly before. His frown deepened. Mom, speak clearly. When did I make you angry again? Jiang Rulin was so angry that her eyes were blazing. She roared, Don't you know what you've done? Tell me yourself, what did you do to Bai Meiwei? You became muddle-headed after drinking a little wine. Not only did you ruin her chastity, you even forced her to abort the child. How can you be so cruel? Are you still my son? Lin Shihao's pupils contracted abruptly, and his fists clenched tightly. He knew that Bai Meiwei must have told her the truth. He gritted his teeth and said sternly, Mom, it's my fault for ruining her chastity. I had my reasons for forcing her to abort the child. I didn't want her to ruin my marriage with Siki. Meiwei already swore to me that she would never ruin your marriage. The child is already more than 3 months old. If she really wanted to ruin your marriage, why would she wait until now? Lin Shihao said sternly, Mom, you don't understand at all. Bai Meiwei isn't as simple as you think. She's deliberately stalling for time. She had an agreement with me previously. If I went on 5 dates with her, she would abort the child on her own accord. But in reality, she had no intention of aborting the child at all. She was lying to me. Even when she got close to you, she had a motive. She wanted to use you. Slap. Jiang Rulin slapped his face. Both of them were stunned at the same time. Lin Shihao's face hurt. He stared at his mother with a complicated expression. Since they were young, he had always been her pride. She had never hit him. Beauty novel Songshu 566. Chapter 426. Jiang Rulin stared at the red mark on his face. Her heart ached a little and she regretted that she had acted rashly. However, her emotions were quickly overshadowed by her anger. She said angrily, Lin Shihao, is this how I taught you? You've done something wrong, yet you refuse to admit it and make up for it. Instead, you push the blame onto others. Is this how I taught you? Lin Shihao was so angry that he laughed. Fine, then tell me, how should I admit my mistake and make up for it? Do I have to divorce Siki and take responsibility for Bai Meiwei before you're satisfied? Have you ever thought that Siki is also a victim? Who among us has ever made it up to her? Jiang Rulin's expression froze. Then she said angrily, Fine, then call Siki out now. We'll discuss how to solve this problem. Siki is on a business trip. She hasn't returned yet. If he told her that Siki had run away from home, it would only cause more trouble. Call her now and ask her to come back quickly. Jiang Rulin became angrier as she spoke. How long has it been? What business trip does she have to be away for so long? How can she not care about such a big thing happening at home? Lin Shihao's expression became uglier and uglier, and he was about to explode. He said in a low voice, Mom, I've been hiding that matter from Siki. It has nothing to do with her. Don't vent your anger on her. Jiang Rulin was still angry and did not feel that she had gone overboard. She still insisted that he call Yi Siki back to discuss countermeasures. Lin Shihao had no choice but to take out his phone and call Yi Siki. He thought that her phone was still turned off, and he had found an excuse to brush off his mother. He did not expect that the call would go through. The phone rang 3 or 4 times before it was picked up. The person on the other end of the line did not speak. His heart almost stopped beating. He held the phone nervously and called her hoarsely, "Wifey?" Yi Siki's voice was very calm. "I'll be home soon. We'll talk when I come back." Without waiting for him to speak, she hung up the phone. Lin Shihao held the phone in a daze. His eyes were blank and a little uneasy. She was back. He was very happy that she had returned safely. However, was she back to divorce him? Jiang Rulin nudged his shoulder. "What did Siki say?" He smiled bitterly. "She'll be home soon." Home soon? Could it be that he's already downstairs? Jiang Rulin muttered to herself and walked straight to the window. Then she lifted the curtains and looked downstairs. They lived on the 5th floor and could clearly see a luxury car parked in the residential area downstairs. Other than that, they didn't see anyone else. Jiang Rulin shook her head. It seemed that she had guessed wrong. She was about to put down the curtain when the car door suddenly opened. A woman wearing a down jacket and snow boots got out of the car. Who else could that be but Yi Siki? Even if she was a little far away, she could still recognize her own daughter-in-law. Yi Siki stood in front of the car and smiled at Xiao Tianxing. "Hurry home and rest. Be careful on the road." Xiao Tianxing smiled. "If you need any help, feel free to contact me." "Got it." She waved her hand and turned to go upstairs. Xiao Tianxing was about to start the car when he suddenly saw the scarf she had left on the seat. He hurriedly called her name. Yi Siki stopped in her tracks and turned around. He had already gotten out of the car and was holding her scarf in his hand. "Your scarf." "Thank you. I was too careless." She quickly took 2 steps forward and wanted to take the scarf from his hand. He didn't give it to her. Instead, he raised his arm and wrapped the scarf around her neck. His actions were gentle and meticulous. Yi Siki awkwardly grabbed the scarf and took a step back. "Thank you. I'll leave first." Jiang Rulin naturally saw this scene. She was so shocked that she shouted, "Shihao, come over quickly. Look at the man with Siki." "Who is he?" Lin Shihao's heart tightened. He strode to the window and happened to see Xiao Tianxing standing in the same spot as he watched Siki go upstairs. Could it be that Siki had been with Xiao Tianxing all this time when she ran away from home? "Do you know that man? I just saw him putting the scarf around Siki's neck. Their actions are too intimate." Jiang Rulin said angrily. Xiao Tianxing was putting a scarf around her neck? Lin Shihao's fingers suddenly clenched and his heart almost stopped. Although he couldn't see Xiao Tianxing's expression clearly, he felt uneasy seeing him standing downstairs for so long and looking in the direction Siki had left. He hadn't guessed wrongly. Xiao Tianxing really liked her. They must have been together for the past 7 or 8 days. Lin Shihao's heart was flustered and in pain. He was worried that Siki had really come back to divorce him. He supported himself against the wall with one hand. His face was deathly pale. He lowered his head slightly, and his fine hair covered his eyes. His movements were stiff as he maintained this position. Jiang Rulin was still nagging at Siki when she suddenly realized that something was wrong with her son. She quickly held his arm. "Shihao, what's wrong? Why do you look so pale?" "I'm fine." Lin Shihao avoided her hand. Click. The door was unlocked. Lin Shihao and Jiang Rulin looked up at the door at the same time. Yi Siki pushed the door open and stood at the door. The moment she saw Jiang Rulin, she was stunned. "Mom, you're here." Jiang Rulin's face was solemn. She didn't say anything and sat down on the sofa with her hands on her knees. She looked like she was about to be interrogated. Yi Siki didn't say anything else. She bent down to change her shoes, hung her coat on the hanger and said calmly, "Mom, have a seat. I'll go make some tea." Jiang Rulin's tone was stiff. "No need. Come here. I have something to say." Yi Siki sat on the sofa opposite her with a calm expression. She had already prepared herself mentally and was waiting for the storm to come. Lin Shihao naturally sat beside her. His expression was terrible. Siki hadn't looked at him since she entered. She was so cold that it made him uneasy. Jiang Rulin glanced at her son, then turned her gaze to Yi Siki. She asked coldly, "Where have you been these past few days?" Yi Siki said calmly, "Lessa Tibet." Lin Shihao's pupils suddenly shrank. Jiang Rulin snorted. "Who did you go with?" "Alone." Jiang Rulin's anger suddenly swelled. She slammed the table. "Alone? Do you think I'm blind? Who was the man who sent you back downstairs just now?" Did you go with him? Yi Siki calmly looked at her angry face. Mom, I went to Tibet alone. He's my boss. He used a private plane to bring me back from Lhasa. That's all. He helped you with your scarf just now. Is this a normal superior-subordinate relationship? Tell me, is there something between you and him that can't be revealed? What business trip? It's all fake. I think it's more like you went out to fool around. Lin Shihao couldn't take it anymore. He stopped her sternly. Mom, don't talk nonsense. Siki isn't that kind of person. Jiang Rulin glared at her son. Shut up. We'll talk about your business later. Yi Siki suddenly found it very funny. Although she had expected to be greeted with a storm, she didn't expect it to be so exciting. It turned out that she was the one who was in the wrong. She chuckled and said calmly, Mom, you're right. Actually, I didn't go on a business trip. I went out to relax. As for why I went out to relax, I think you should be very clear. I know whether I did anything to let your son down. He knows very well. You're so anxious to force me to admit those groundless things. Do you think that if I also made a mistake, there's no reason not to forgive your son's mistakes? Jiang Rulin's hidden intentions were exposed. Her face turned red and white and she looked very ugly. Yi Siki continued, Mom, I'm not stupid. I understand some things. I'm just pretending not to understand because I don't want to be so calculative. In my heart, you're all my family. How can there be so many petty things between family members? But after all these years, have you ever treated me as family? Even if you raised a dog for 8 years, you would still have feelings for it. They had been together for 8 years. How could she not have any scruples about the serious crime of infidelity on her head for her son's sake? Yi Siki's calm gaze fell on Jiang Rulin. There was no blame or anger, but it was so calm that it made her heart palpitate. She said angrily, Even if there's nothing between you and that man, you can't deny that he has other intentions for you. You abandoned your family and your son these past few days. Do you think you're in the right? Mom stopped talking. Lin Shihao's face was ashen. He said agitatedly, Siki went out to relax because of me. It has nothing to do with her at all. Don't push all the blame onto her. Jiang Rulin was so angry at her son that she wanted to vomit blood. Who did she say so much for? Wasn't it to save some face for him? Yet he was standing on his daughter-in-law's side. He had completely thrown away his dignity as the man in charge of the family. Lin Shihao didn't care about her anger at all. He said in a low voice, Mom, you didn't come here today to blame Siki. You came here to discuss how to solve Bai Meiwei's problem. Don't get the main point wrong. Jiang Rulin was so angry that her fingers trembled. She glared at him fiercely. Fine. Then tell me, what do you plan to do? The child is already 3 months old. Don't tell me you still want her to abort the child? Lin Shihao glanced at the expressionless Yi Siki with her eyebrows lowered. He said slowly, the child can't be kept. I plan to ask Director Bai for forgiveness. Director Bai will definitely not agree to Bai Meiwei keeping the child. Jiang Rulin snorted coldly. I think you're too naive. If Director Bai knew that his daughter's uterus was stunted and she couldn't have another child after aborting the child, do you think he would still force his daughter to abort the child? What's more, have you thought about the consequences of asking Director Bai for forgiveness? If it's a light punishment, you'll be fired from the hospital and lose your job. If it's a heavy punishment, you'll be sued in court and your reputation will be ruined. Lin Shihao clenched his fists. His eyes were frighteningly hazy. I've already made preparations. Even if I end up with nothing and my reputation ruined, I'll protect this family. Jiang Rulin's voice was fierce. Then have you considered for Nyonyo? She'll be laughed at for having a rapist for a father. Welfare Xinwu 799. Chapter 427. Jiang Rulin said sternly, Then have you considered Nyonyo's situation? She'll be laughed at for having a rapist for a father. Lin Shihao pursed his thin lips. There was an indescribable emotion surging in his deep eyes. He clenched his fists tightly and said in a low and cold voice, Being laughed at is better than being in a single-parent family. I won't let Nyonyo lose her father or mother. After Jiang Rulin's intense outburst, she seemed to have lost all her energy. She leaned against the sofa stiffly and tiredly and said weakly, Siki, what do you think? Yi Siki stroked the hair by her ear and said calmly, My thoughts are simple. If Bai Meiwei wants to give birth to the child, I'll take Nyonyo and leave. Lin Shihao's body stiffened and he blurted out, I won't let her give birth to the child. Jiang Rulin was silent for a few seconds and said, Things haven't reached that stage yet. Let's have a good talk with Meiwei. The atmosphere froze and the three of them fell silent. Isiki didn't want to dwell on this issue and said calmly, "I'm going to visit my parents and bring Nyonyo back." She got up to leave, but Lin Shihao grabbed her wrist and stood up. "I'll go with you." His mother-in-law had become suspicious these days and had asked him many times if there were any problems with his relationship with Siki. You should tell them the truth. Even if they scolded and punished him, he would ask for their forgiveness. Jiang Rulin guessed her son's thoughts and wanted to stop him, but when she saw his determined expression, she swallowed her words. "I'm going to change." Isiki slowly pushed his hand away with an indifferent expression. Lin Shihao drove while Isiki sat in the passenger seat. She turned her head to look out the window. It was almost the spring festival and the shops were booming with business. Many people had already started to buy New Year's goods. In the past, she would happily buy new clothes for her husband and child at this time, but this year she felt dispirited and desolate. She didn't know if their family of three could have a reunion. "Honey," Lin Shihao suddenly spoke in a low voice. "Did you see the messages I sent you?" She was silent for a while before she said faintly, "No, I deleted them all." Lin Shihao tilted his head and looked at her frail back view. His heart felt uncomfortable. His slender fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly, and his expression was gloomy. "Honey, I've lied to you 3 times. The first time I said that I was celebrating my colleague's birthday, but I was actually on a date with Bai Meiwei. We went to see a movie. The second time I said I was going to attend a seminar, but I was actually eating with Bai Meiwei at the revolving restaurant. The third time on Christmas Day I said..." "Enough," Isiki interrupted him coldly. "You don't have to say any more. I already knew that you were lying to me and I was lying to you too. I placed a tracker in the trunk of your car. I know where you and Bai Meiwei went like the back of my hand. It wasn't an accident that we ran into each other at the revolving restaurant and the clothing store. I did it on purpose. My goal was to ruin your date." Lin Shihao's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. She closed her eyes and her tone was slightly tired. "I've always trusted you and I've never doubted you, but you've shattered my trust in you time and time again. You see, there's no such thing as trust between us anymore. You lied to me and I lied to you. We're even now." He could tell that she was disheartened. His heart clenched as he slammed on the brakes and pulled the car to the side. He abruptly turned her shoulders around to face him. He stared into her eyes and said anxiously, "Honey, listen to me. The reason why I went on a date with Bai Meiwei was because I had a promise with her. Within a month we had to go on 5 dates and then she would have to abort the child. I was worried that you would leave me if you found out that she was pregnant, so I kept it from you. It's my fault. I shouldn't have kept it from you, and I shouldn't have lied to you. It's all my fault. Please give me another chance." The man who was gentle and calm, open-minded and unrestrained, who would remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, was gone. Isiki only saw a face full of panic. Her heart felt a little uncomfortable and her eyes felt a little sour. She thought that after the trip to Lessa she could face him calmly, but she had overestimated her ability to bear it. She bit her lip hard and lowered her eyes. She didn't want to see his deep and painful eyes. She said lightly, "I didn't want to come back, but I can't let go of Nyonyo. Let Bai Meiwei abort the child. Otherwise I'll take Nyonyo away." This was already her bottom line. She couldn't give in anymore. Lin Shihao suddenly pulled her into his arms. His strong and powerful arms hugged her tightly, and his voice was hoarse. "I'll make her abort the child. I'll definitely make her abort the child." Zhou Rongfang and Yi Weiliang were both honest retired workers. The couple had a son and a daughter. Their son and daughter-in-law lived in another city. Their daughter, Yisiki, was married in this city and often went back to visit the old couple. This time, their daughter went on a business trip for 7 to 8 days and didn't even make a phone call. The old couple's hearts were in turmoil. They kept feeling that something had happened between their daughter and son-in-law. When Lin Shihao and his wife arrived at the Yi family's house, the old couple accompanied their granddaughter, Nyonyo, to do her homework in the living room. When Nyonyo saw her parents, whom she hadn't seen for a few days, she excitedly pounced on them and hugged their legs, refusing to let go. "Mommy, why did you go on a business trip for so long? I missed you so much." Yisiki picked up her daughter and smiled as she pinched her face. "Mommy is back now. Tell Mommy, did you listen to Grandpa and Grandma at home?" "Yes, I'm very obedient. I help Grandma clean up the dishes every day. Isn't that right, Grandma?" Nyonyo hugged her neck and turned her little head to Zhou Rongfang. She winked mischievously. "Yes, our family's Nyonyo is very obedient. Zhou Rongfang smiled as she welcomed the couple into the house and made tea for them. Siki, take Nyonyo back to her room to do her homework. I have something to discuss with Dad and Mom. Yi Siki glanced at Lin Shihao. His expression was solemn. He must have made a decision. She pursed her lips. Dad, Mom, I'll take Nyonyo back to her room first. She picked up her daughter's homework book and led her back to her room. She locked the door. Nyonyo sat in front of the desk. Her skinny back was straight. She held a ballpoint pen in her hand and wrote her homework stroke by stroke. Yi Siki's gaze fell on her daughter, but all her attention was elsewhere. She didn't know how Lin Shihao's discussion with his parents went. She didn't know if her parents would blame him. In the living room, Lin Shihao told the two elders about his drunken mistake and Bai Meiwei's pregnancy in full detail. Zhou Rongfang couldn't believe her ears. After the shock, her body trembled slightly. How could this be? How could this happen? Yi Weiliang's face was ashen. He almost fainted. His back slumped against the sofa as he gasped heavily. Zhou Rongfang hurriedly rushed over and rubbed his chest. Old man, don't be agitated. Be careful of your high blood pressure. Lin Shihao strode over to the cupboard and took out the medicine bottle for treating high blood pressure. He poured out a few pills and brought a cup of warm water to Yi Weiliang. Dad, don't be agitated. Take the medicine first. You go away. Yi Weiliang was agitated. He trembled as he pushed Lin Shihao away. The pills in Lin Shihao's hand fell to the ground, and the water in the cup spilled all over the floor. Old man, what are you doing? Zhou Rongfang's tears streamed down her face. She wiped them away. Shihao, give me the medicine. Zhou Rongfang took the medicine bottle from Lin Shihao. She poured out the pills again and fed them to Yi Weiliang. Yi Weiliang slowly closed his eyes and leaned against the sofa in dejection and exhaustion. After resting for a while, he opened his eyes and glared angrily at Lin Shihao. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Go away. I don't want to see you. Old man, what's the use of chasing him away now? The most important thing is that we have to come up with a countermeasure. Yi Weiliang was impatient. He was so angry that he almost lost his mind. Although Zhou Rongfang was angry, she still had reason. She tried to persuade her husband. Lin Shihao clenched his fists. His eyes were as dark as the sea. His tall and straight body was like a mountain standing in front of them. His whole body emitted an extremely oppressive aura. Slowly, he bent his knees and knelt on the cold floor. His chest was very straight, like a pine tree, fearlessly welcoming the attack of the wind and snow. Zhou Rongfang and Yi Weiliang were both shocked. As the saying goes, a man has gold under his knees. Moreover, Lin Shihao was a man full of pride. It was impossible for him to kneel to anyone. At this moment, he threw away his dignity and faced to kneel here and beg for their forgiveness. His eyes were extremely sincere. He said word by word, Dad, Mom, I was drunk and did something wrong. I have already sworn that I will never drink again in my life. I have let down Siki and your trust in me. Please give me another chance. I will make up for my mistakes and treat Siki and Nyonyo well. Yi Weiliang was furious. He turned his head away and refused to look at him. He had hurt her daughter. How could Zhou Rongfang not be angry? How could she not hate him? But her daughter and son-in-law were husband and wife after all. They even had a child together. Was she going to divorce him because of this? She sighed and tugged at Yi Weiliang's sleeve. Yi Weiliang ignored her and continued to sulk. Lin Shihao did not speak anymore. He knelt silently in front of the two elders. The two sides were in a deadlock for more than 10 minutes. Yi Weiliang's anger subsided a little. He turned his neck stiffly and stared coldly at Lin Shihao. He asked stiffly, What do you plan to do? Lin Shihao said respectfully, I will think of a way to make Bai Meiwei abort the child. Zhou Rongfang asked, Shihao, do you still want to live with Siki? Lin Shihao's tone was firm. Mom, I love Siki. I have never thought of divorcing her. Please believe me. Zhou Rongfang was satisfied with his attitude. She tugged at her husband's sleeve again. This time Yi Weiliang was finally willing to give her a way out. He said coldly, Get up. Welfare Songshu 566. Chapter 428. When Yi Siki came out of the bedroom, they had already finished talking. Her mother's eyes were slightly red, and her father was sulking. When Lin Shihao saw her come out, his eyes moved and he pursed his lips slightly. Dad, Mom, I'll go in and see Nyonyo. Zhou Rongfang nodded. Only the three of them were left in the living room. Yi Siki sat opposite her parents. Zhou Rongfang looked at her and sighed. Siki, Why didn't you tell us earlier that such a big thing happened? Yi Siki said gently. Mom, I thought that I could solve it, so I didn't want you to worry. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. Zhou Rongfang's eyes reddened again. She choked a little. Silly girl, we were worried about you. Mom, I'm fine. Yi Siki got up and sat beside her. She held her hands and smiled. Yi Weiliang coughed and said in a deep voice, Siki, although we didn't make things difficult for Lin Shihao, it's still up to you whether you want to forgive him. Zhou Rongfang frowned and held Siki's hands tightly. Siki, tell me honestly. Do you still want to be with him? She was worried that her daughter was stubborn and wouldn't forgive Lin Shihao. Yi Siki pursed her lips. Dad, Mom, I want to give him another chance. It's not for myself but for Nyonyo. I don't want my child to grow up in a single-parent family. Zhou Rongfang heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, she didn't approve of them getting a divorce. After all, they still had feelings for each other. Yi Siki didn't want to get a divorce for her daughter's sake, but her condition was that Bai Meiwei had to abort the child. How to make Bai Meiwei abort the child had already become a headache for Lin Shihao. On the other hand, Jiang Rulin was also in a dilemma. She didn't want her son and daughter-in-law to get a divorce, but she also wanted to help Bai Meiwei keep the child. As for why she wanted to help Bai Meiwei keep the child, there were two reasons. First, if Bai Meiwei aborted the child, she wouldn't be able to have children in the future. Jiang Rulin couldn't bear to see Bai Meiwei fall into that situation. Secondly, Bai Meiwei had already said that she was pregnant with a son. Jiang Rulin had always dreamed of holding a grandson. Although this grandson was not the legitimate son, he was still her son's seed. Of course, she couldn't bear to let Bai Meiwei abort it. Due to the above two reasons, Jiang Rulin didn't actively help her son come up with a plan to abort the child. Instead, she tried to persuade Lin Shihao and his wife to have a good talk with Bai Meiwei, hoping that both sides would reach an agreement. Soon, they began a four-person meeting to discuss the child's fate. In the VIP room of the restaurant, the three members of the Lin family had already taken their seats. Bai Meiwei arrived late. She was wearing a white coat, which made her originally white cheeks appear even paler. When the waiter pulled out a chair for her, she stretched out her right hand and carefully protected her abdomen. This protective posture of a mother-to-be hurt Yi Siki's eyes. She lowered her eyes, picked up the teacup and took a sip of hot tea. Bai Meiwei smiled gently. Auntie Jiang, I'm sorry I'm late. There was a bit of a traffic jam on the way. It's okay. It's the weekend. It's normal to have a lot of traffic on the road. Jiang Rulin smiled kindly. The two of them had a lot in common and quickly chatted. Yi Siki drank her tea silently. Lin Shihao said expressionlessly, let's talk business. Bai Meiwei smiled slightly. Okay. Lin Shihao looked at her and said in a low voice, Meiwei, I hope you can give up on the child. The smile on Bai Meiwei's face froze. She put down the teacup in her hand and said in a sad tone, Senior, if I abort this child, I won't be able to be a mother in the future. Are you really that heartless? I've already said that I won't destroy your and sister-in-law's family. After I give birth to the child, I'll stay far away and never disturb you again. Can't I do that? Lin Shihao's expression changed slightly and he clenched his fists. His voice was still cold as he said, The child in your stomach is like a thorn in my and Siki's heart. If we don't remove it, the three of us won't be able to live a peaceful life. Your body is special. It's just that it's difficult for you to give birth. It's not completely impossible. I believe that with current medical standards, your illness can definitely be cured. Meiwei, you're still young. You still have a bright future ahead of you. Don't ruin yourself because of this child. Senior, you don't understand at all. Even if my illness can be cured, I can't risk the child in my stomach. He's my child. He's my flesh and blood. He's already been in my body for more than 3 months and has become one with my flesh and blood. How can I be heartless enough to abandon him? Bai Meiwei's beautiful eyes were already misty and her expression was distressed. Her sobbing appearance really made one's heart ache. At least, she had aroused Jiang Rulin's sympathy. Her teary eyes turned slightly and her gaze fell on Jiang Rulin. Auntie Jiang, you're also a mother. You'll definitely understand my feelings as a mother. Even if I lose everything, even if I'm penniless, I still want to protect my child. I also want to raise my child into an adult. Jiang Rulin's heart ached. Bai Meiwei's words evoked her sad past. She wasn't a strong woman from the start. After her husband passed away, she had no choice but to be strong for the sake of her son, who was still in high school. Even if she had to sell everything she had, she still wanted to raise her son into a talent. Jiang Rulin faced Bai Meiwei's earnest gaze and couldn't say anything to refute her. She could only sigh heavily. Yusiki looked coldly at Bai Meiwei. Seeing how vividly she played the role of the weak, the corners of her lips curled up mockingly. She said calmly, Miss Bai, as far as I know, you had a prior agreement with Shihao. If he went on 5 dates with you within a month, you would agree to abort the child. Am I right? Bai Meiwei was slightly taken aback. Yes, we did have such an agreement. But now I've already. Before she could finish speaking, Yusiki interrupted her. In other words, you originally planned to give up the child. Bai Meiwei bit her lip. I've already changed my mind. Besides, I only went on 3 dates with Senior. Even if I changed my mind, I didn't violate our agreement. Is that so? Yusiki responded calmly. She took out her phone and scrolled through a few photos. Then she raised the phone to face her. You said that you wouldn't break up our family. Then let me ask you, why did you send me photos of you and my husband on a date? Bai Meiwei glanced at the photos. It was a profile shot of Lin Shihao standing in front of a hot beverage store. She smiled calmly. Sister-in-law, you might have misunderstood. I never sent you these photos. The sender's number isn't mine. Yusiki chuckled. Miss Bai, I have to hand it to you. You're very meticulous. This number isn't registered with your personal ID, so we can't trace it back to you. However, only the 2 of you knew about your date with my husband. It's obvious that my husband wouldn't take these photos and send them to me. If that person wasn't you, who else could it be? Lin Shihao took the phone from Yusiki and glanced at the photos. His expression turned ugly. Even if Bai Meiwei didn't admit it, he knew that she was the only one who had the opportunity to take these photos. He raised his head and stared at Bai Meiwei with a sharp gaze. Although Jiang Rulin didn't see the photos, she roughly understood the situation. She also turned her gaze to Bai Meiwei and waited for her answer. Faced with 3 pairs of eyes, Bai Meiwei remained calm and said calmly, I really didn't send these photos. Maybe someone who knows us found out that I was dating Senior, so they secretly took our photos and sent them to you on purpose to attract your attention. Sister-in-law, if I really wanted to ruin your relationship, I wouldn't have used such a troublesome method. I would have just told you about my pregnancy. I've been hiding it from you all this time because I didn't want to ruin your relationship with Senior. Her words were spoken in a solemn and sincere manner. Yusiki and Lin Shihao had already seen through her true colors and didn't believe her anymore. However, Jiang Rulin was different. She had only known Bai Meiwei for a short period of time, and Bai Meiwei had deliberately tried to get close to her, leaving her with a good impression. Therefore, she easily believed Bai Meiwei's words. Jiang Rulin helped her smooth things over. I believe that Meiwei wouldn't do such a thing. There's no need to talk about the past now. Let's think about the main purpose of our visit today. No matter how Lin Shihao tried to persuade her, Bai Meiwei refused to give up the child. She insisted on giving birth to the child. In the end, both parties parted on bad terms. On the way home, Lin Shihao, Yusiki, and Yusiki's hearts were heavy. No one spoke. Lin Shihao dropped Jiang Rulin off at her neighborhood. Jiang Rulin wasn't in a hurry to get out of the car. She glanced at Yusiki, who was sitting in the back seat with her, and then looked at Lin Shihao, who was driving. She slowly said, On the way back, I've been thinking about the child. I've thought of an idea, but I'm afraid you won't agree. Lin Shihao turned his head. Mom, tell me. What's the idea? Jiang Rulin coughed and said uncomfortably, Agree to Bai Meiwei giving birth to the child. After the child is born, we'll bring him back to our family and raise him. He'll take your surname. As for Meiwei, she can visit the child regularly. Before she could finish speaking, Lin Shihao angrily interrupted her. Mom, how could you come up with such a ridiculous idea? I definitely won't keep this child. The most difficult thing to say had already been said, so Jiang Rulin couldn't care about anything else. When her son shouted, she immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. Bai Meiwei is pregnant with a son. He's also our Lin family's child. What's wrong with letting her give birth to the child and let him acknowledge his ancestors? Yusiki clenched her fists tightly and pinched her palms. She was trying her best to suppress the bitterness in her heart. Her mother-in-law actually said such things. Lin Shihao's face was ashen. He said angrily, Only the child my wife gives birth to will be a descendant of the Lin family. I only have one child, Nyonyo. Mom, don't ever mention such things again. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 429. In the end, all 3 parties were defeated. Because of an unborn child, their familial ties were trampled and torn apart. Yusiki was physically and mentally exhausted. She leaned her head against the seat and didn't look back even after Jiang Rulin got out of the car. Lin Shihao looked through the rearview mirror and saw Yi Siki's curled-up figure in the corner. His heart ached. It was all his fault that things had developed to this point. If he hadn't gotten drunk that night and that incident hadn't happened, their family of 3 would still be living happily. How great would that be? Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Bai Meiwei refused to compromise. He only had a glimmer of hope left, and that was to find Director Bai and ask him to stop Bai Meiwei. Lin Shihao was already prepared for the worst. Even if he was sued and had to bear the legal responsibility, he would be willing to do so. Bai Jiao was the director of the People's Hospital in the city. He was highly respected in the hospital. He was in his 50s and was kind. Although he was in a high position, he never put on airs. Lin Shihao had always admired him. Bai Jiao only had one precious daughter, Bai Meiwei. He hoped that his daughter would become a phoenix and paid great attention to her education since she was young. After she graduated from university, he specially sent her to the United States to further her studies for 2 years. He hoped that his daughter could inherit his legacy and become a good doctor with superb medical skills and noble medical ethics. By family study. When Lin Shihao told him everything that had happened between him and Bai Meiwei, Bai Jiao couldn't take the blow and almost fainted. His face was pale and his finger trembled as he pointed at Lin Shihao's nose. "Why, you're telling the truth?" Lin Shihao said in a low voice. "Director Bai, it's all my fault. I'm here today to ask for forgiveness. I'm willing to accept any punishment." Bai Jiao fell heavily on the sofa and stared blankly at Lin Shihao. He still couldn't believe what he had just heard. At this time he looked like an old man in his twilight years. He didn't have his usual hale and hearty demeanor. After a long time he finally recovered from his great shock. His sharp eyes looked at Lin Shihao. "What do you plan to do?" Lin Shihao pursed his thin lips and said in a low voice, "As long as Meiwei gives up the child, I have no objections no matter what compensation you ask me to make." Bai Jiao was silent for a moment. He picked up the landline and informed the servant to invite Miss to his study. 2 minutes later, Bai Meiwei knocked on the door of the study. She didn't know that Lin Shihao was here. When she saw him, her heart tightened. Then she carefully observed her father's face. It was dark and frowning. It seemed that he was trying to suppress his anger. She immediately felt uneasy. It seemed that Lin Shihao had told her father about her pregnancy. She pretended that nothing had happened and smiled. "Dad, are you looking for me?" Bai Jiao sat on the sofa. His eyes were burning with anger. He stared at Bai Meiwei, who was standing not far away, and shouted sternly, "Kneel." Bai Meiwei bit her lip and bent her legs. Gigai knelt on the ground. Her long eyelashes fluttered and bean-sized tears immediately rolled down her face. Her tear-stained face was full of helplessness and grievance. Bai Jiao stiffened his neck and shouted angrily, "You unfilial daughter. Tell me, what embarrassing things have you done?" "Dad," Bai Meiwei sobbed. "Dad, don't be angry. I didn't do it on purpose. I really didn't do it on purpose." Lin Shihao clenched his fists tightly. His expression was extremely ugly. His deep eyes fell on Bai Meiwei's face. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Director Bai, all of this has nothing to do with Meiwei. I was drunk and harmed her. If you want to hit, scold, blame, or punish, do it all to me. I won't have any objections." "Dad, Senior didn't do it on purpose, he was just drunk. Dad, I beg you, please forgive us." Bai Meiwei knelt on the ground with both legs, moving step by step towards Bai Jiao. She was crying her heart out, making people with a heart of stone unable to help but feel pity for her, let alone her father. Bai Jiao clenched his fists. The veins on the back of his hands were throbbing. He closed his eyes and slowly opened them again. In a cold voice he said, "Meiwei, abort the child. As for you, Lin Shihao, hand over your work and leave the hospital. Don't ever let me see you again." "No, Dad." Bai Meiwei hugged Bai Jiao's legs and cried, "Dad, I can't abort this child. My uterus is maldeveloped. If I abort this child, I won't be able to give birth in the future. Dad, I beg you, let me give birth to this child. Let me give birth to this child." Bai Jiao's body stiffened. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. How could this be? This child couldn't be kept. But if this was the only child in his daughter's life, how could he take it away from her? Lin Shihao had already expected this to happen. He said slowly, "Director Bai, I've studied this kind of case. After treatment with traditional Chinese medicine, even after an abortion, there's still a 20% chance of pregnancy." Bai Meiwei cried and shook her head. No, there's only a 20% chance of success. What if I fall into that 80% chance? Dad, I beg you, let me give birth to this child. If you think I'm embarrassing, I'll go to America to give birth. I'll stay in America in the future and never come back to embarrass you. Dad, I beg you. Bai Meiwei cried bitterly and shook Bai Jiao's legs. Bai Jiao's temples throbbed and his head hurt. On one hand, it was his daughter and the Bai family's reputation. On the other hand, it was his daughter's right to be a mother. His daughter was right. There was only a 20% chance of success. No one could guarantee that his daughter would be able to give birth in the future. Bai Jiao looked at his daughter who was crying like a baby and found it difficult to make a decision. Suddenly he seemed to have aged 10 years. He waved his hand and said, "Get up first. Let me think about this matter." Because she had knelt for too long, her legs were a little numb. When Bai Meiwei stood up, her legs were still trembling. She wiped the tears from her face and sobbed softly. Bai Jiao's face was cold as he ordered his guest to leave. Lin Shihao could only follow the servant downstairs and leave. In the following week, Bai Jiao seemed to have forgotten about this matter. He didn't do anything, nor did he force Lin Shihao to hand over his work and resign. Bai Meiwei also went to work as usual. The difference was that she didn't deliberately approach Lin Shihao. Even if they met in the hospital, she didn't look at him sideways as if she didn't know him. Lin Shihao didn't understand what the Bai family was up to. He was secretly anxious. During this period of time, he and Siki were still as loving as before in front of Nyonyo. But behind Nyonyo's back they were actually respectful to each other. They were as polite as strangers. There was no love between husband and wife. If he wanted to break the barrier between them, he had to get rid of the child in Bai Meiwei's stomach as soon as possible. Otherwise the gap between him and Siki would only grow wider. Lin Shihao was suffering and Yi Siki was also suffering. She was even distracted when she was working. When she was researching new dishes, she added half a spoon of salt. Uncle Yu had always been strict with her. He scolded her with a fierce face. Yi Siki hung her head and let him scold her. The chefs and helpers around them turned to look at her from time to time. They couldn't believe that she would make such a low-level mistake. There were also some who were jealous of her. They silently watched the show. After being scolded, Yi Siki smiled. Uncle Yu, don't be angry. I'll make another serving. Uncle Yu snorted coldly. Yi Siki immediately ran to the kitchen and washed and cut the vegetables again. It was in full swing. Uncle Yu, I'm done. Please have a taste. After Yi Siki finished cooking, she brought it in front of Uncle Yu again. Uncle Yu tasted it and said calmly, this time it's a pass. Thank you, Uncle Yu. Yi Siki grinned. When she finished clearing the dishes and turned to go back to the kitchen, Uncle Yu said calmly, whether it's being a nutritionist or doing other jobs, don't bring your personal feelings into your work. Yi Siki stopped in her tracks. Her eyes were hot as she grinned. I know, Uncle Yu. In the bathroom, Yi Siki looked at herself in the mirror. There was a stiff smile on her face. It was as ugly as a mask that was about to crack. She turned on the tap and splashed cold water on her cheeks. There were people walking towards the bathroom from the corridor. The two of them were still chatting. One of the women said, Isn't that Yi Siki very capable? How come she doesn't even know how to add salt when cooking? The other woman laughed. Are you jealous that she has a backer? She became Uncle Yu's assistant as soon as she came in? I'm jealous of her? I just can't stand her. Just because she has a backer, she doesn't follow the rules and regulations. She takes a week off as soon as she asks for it. Senior employees like us can only take a week of annual leave after working for a full year. She just joined the company and... The woman's voice stopped abruptly. She had already walked to the bathroom door and saw Yi Siki standing in front of the sink. Yi Siki acted as if she hadn't heard or seen anything. She continued splashing cold water on her face. Then she looked up at the mirror and calmly wiped the water off her face. The two gossipy women's faces turned red and white as they stood awkwardly at the door. Yi Siki calmly walked up to them and said calmly, Please make way. The two women hurriedly moved aside, and Yi Siki calmly walked past them. In the corridor, Xiao Tianxing crossed his arms and leaned leisurely against the railing. There was a faint smile in his deep eyes as he looked at her quietly. Yi Siki walked up to him and asked, What are you doing here? Xiao Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said, There are too many people here. If you don't want others to say anything nasty, follow me. With that, he walked towards the elevator. Yi Siki laughed self-deprecatingly. What other nasty things could they say? They wouldn't go so far as to say that I'm your mistress, right? Even though she said that, she still followed him into the elevator. When the elevator doors closed, only the two of them were left in the narrow space. He smirked and chuckled. They wouldn't go so far as to say that I'm their mistress. They trust my judgment. Beauty novel Xingwu 799. Chapter 430. Yisiki glared at him. What do you mean by that? Am I not beautiful? Xiao Tianxing rested his chin on his left hand and smiled happily. Beautiful. You are very beautiful. But they think that I like the type of girls who are full of fans. As for you, you are slightly lacking. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She snorted coldly and turned her head to ignore him. Xiao Tianxing's smile widened. He said carelessly, Are you angry? I'm just kidding. Your type is just right. He was afraid that she didn't understand, so he made an S sign with his hands. I beg of you. Let's not talk about this anymore. Yisiki was embarrassed and annoyed. She rolled her eyes at him. President Xiao, don't you have anything better to do? Xiao Tianxing raised his eyebrows. Of course not. I heard that someone was scolded badly by Uncle Yu. As her boss and friend, I have the obligation to show my concern. Yisiki shrugged. Don't worry. My psychological endurance is not that bad. The elevator stopped. Xiao Tianxing brought her into his office. The bright sunlight shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows onto the thick carpet. A snow-white Persian cat was curled up on the soft sofa. When it heard someone come in, it raised its head lazily. Its beautiful eyes narrowed. Soon, it laid its head down and went back to sleep. Yisiki said in surprise, You have a pet in your office. No one can stop me from enjoying life. To me, work is also a form of enjoyment. Xiao Tianxing poured 2 cups of handmade coffee. He placed 1 cup in front of her and the other in front of him. He held the Persian cat in his arms with one hand and gently rubbed its head. Yisiki sighed. My admiration for you is like a torrential river that flows endlessly. Xiao Tianxing chuckled. He took a sip of coffee. How are things going with your family? He guessed that her distraction from work might have something to do with her family. Yisiki stroked the hair by her ear with an indifferent expression. Bai Meiwei insisted on keeping the child. Shihao confessed everything to Director Bai, hoping that he could step in and stop Bai Meiwei. But until now he hasn't given an answer. Do you think Dean Bai will force Bai Meiwei to abort the child? Xiao Tianxing leaned back on the sofa with a serious look on his face. Yisiki smiled bitterly. I've thought about this for a long time. I've been comforting myself that Dean Bai will force her to abort the child for the sake of Bai Meiwei's reputation. But my conscience tells me that Dean Bai will very likely support his daughter to keep the child. After all, that child might be his daughter's only child. Which parent would dare to take such a big risk? Xiao Tianxing's deep eyes moved. Have you ever considered that Dean Bai actually has a third option? He can force Lin Shihao to marry his daughter. If he does that, what will you do? Yisiki was stunned. She really hadn't thought of this. Lin Shihao hadn't thought of this either. She held the coffee cup in a daze. Her fingers trembled slightly as she shook her head. I don't know. I really don't know. Xiao Tianxing tightened his grip on the Persian cat. The cat meowed impatiently and he slowly let go. He stroked its soft fur and said calmly, If Bai Meiwei insists on giving birth to the child, are you still willing to continue living with Lin Shihao? Yisiki wanted to put the coffee cup back on the coffee table, but when she heard what he said, she panicked and knocked over the coffee cup. The scalding coffee spilled onto the glass coffee table and slowly flowed onto the carpet. She quickly pulled out a tissue to wipe it off, but Xiao Tianxing suddenly leaned forward and grabbed her wrist. His voice was urgent. Did you burn your hand? No. Yisiki awkwardly tried to pull her right hand away. She looked anxiously at the pool of coffee. Hurry up and let go of me. The coffee is going to spill onto the carpet. Let me see the back of your hand. Xiao Tianxing couldn't help but let go of her hand. He pulled her wrist in front of him. There was a small red mark on the back of her fair hand. It was obvious that she had been scalded by the scalding coffee. His face darkened and his brows furrowed. He dragged her to the bathroom and complained, You said you weren't scalded. Your skin is red. Do you know what's most important? You've already scalded yourself. Why do you care about the carpet? Yisiki was scolded by him until she couldn't raise her head. She retorted softly, It only spilled 2 drops on the back of my hand. The temperature wasn't very high either. I'm really fine. Xiao Tianxing suddenly turned around and glared at her. Can't you take care of yourself a little? As he spoke, he had already dragged her into the bathroom. As expected of a presidential suite, even the bathroom was incomparably luxurious. Xiao Tianxing turned on the tap and washed the back of her hand with cold water. He warned her with a sullen face, "I'm going out for a while. Continue to wash the back of your hand with cold water for at least 10 minutes. Got it?" Yi Siki looked at his stern face and wanted to laugh. However, she was afraid of angering him, so she could only force herself to hold it in. Xiao Tianxing glared at her as a warning. Then he returned to his office and called his secretary over the internal line to send in a bottle of ointment for burns. As a 5-star hotel, they still had a stock of such ointment. Yi Siki stood obediently in front of the sink and washed the back of her hand with cold water. Xiao Tianxing suddenly walked in and placed a bottle of ointment on the sink. "It's about time. Apply this ointment to the back of your hand." "Thank you." Although Yi Siki didn't hear his conversation with his secretary, she understood his good intentions when she saw the ointment. Her heart was filled with gratitude. The conversation between them was interrupted by this small episode and did not continue. Yi Siki had disappeared for too long. It was time for her to go back to the kitchen and take a look. When she returned to the kitchen, Uncle Yu had just assigned a new task for her. She was busy with work and quickly forgot about her conversation with Xiao Tianxing. It wasn't until she received a phone call that night that she realized how far-sighted Xiao Tianxing was. At night, after Yi Siki coaxed her daughter to sleep, she returned to the bedroom. Lin Shihao was taking a shower in the bathroom when his phone on the bedside table rang. She hurried forward and picked up his phone. The caller ID showed that it was Director Bai. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She guessed that Director Bai was calling to talk to him about Bai Meiwei. She hesitated whether to answer the call, but her fingers had already uncontrollably pressed the answer button. "Little Lin," Bai Jiao's weathered voice rang in her ear. She opened her mouth and was about to say that she wasn't Lin Shihao when Bai Jiao continued, "I've thought about it carefully these past few days. I still can't be ruthless. Meiwei is my only daughter. I can't use her child as a stake." Yi Siki's uneasy heart fell to the bottom. Her limbs were cold and her fingers were trembling. She almost couldn't hold the phone. He continued, "Little Lin, you said that you let Meiwei down and that you were willing to make up for it. I only have one request. Divorce your wife, marry my daughter, and take responsibility for her. If you agree to my request, I'll let this matter go. You'll still be the director of our hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department. If you don't agree to my request, we'll meet in court. Even if I have to throw away my old face, I'll get justice for my daughter." Yi Siki sat heavily on the bed. Her right hand loosened and the phone fell to the ground with a bang. Lin Shihao happened to come out of the bathroom. He glanced at Siki, who was sitting at the head of the bed in a daze, and then at the phone on the ground. He had a bad feeling in his heart. He quickly bent down to pick up the phone. The screen showed that he was on the phone with Director Bai. Director Bai said earnestly, "Little Lin, I've always thought highly of you and even groomed you as my successor. You can call me despicable or blame me for being ruthless, but I don't care. As a father, I just want my daughter to be happy." Lin Shihao didn't hear a single word he said. His mind was filled with guesses about what he had said to Siki. Lin Shihao said faintly, "Got it." Then he ended the call. He walked in front of Siki and asked, "Honey, what did Director Bai say to you over the phone just now?" Yi Siki looked up at him. Her face was pale and her expression was bitter. "He said that he wants you to divorce me and marry Bai Meiwei. Otherwise he'll take you to court." "Shihao, we've guessed many possible outcomes, but this was the only one we didn't think of. Tell me, what should we do?" Lin Shihao hugged her tightly and said in a low voice, "Honey, even if he takes me to court, even if I have to bear the legal responsibility, I won't divorce you." Yi Siki's nose was sour and her eyes were misty. She leaned against his chest and could hear his heart beating very fast and very frantically. His fingers pressed tightly against her back. It hurt a little, but this pain was nothing compared to the pain in his heart. They were now facing internal and external troubles and were besieged on all sides. She was hurt both physically and mentally and didn't know if she could still hold on. Lin Shihao knew very well what her silence meant. His arms tightened around her as if he wanted to squeeze her into his body. His voice was low and hoarse as he said, "Honey, tell me that you'll hold on with me." She bit her lip and tears silently flowed down her face. "Even if the whole world spurns me, I won't give up on you." His chest rose and fell violently and there were tears in his eyes. Yi Siki couldn't hold it in anymore. She hugged him and bawled. She didn't understand why God wanted to torture them like this. They were clearly two people in love, but they couldn't stay together properly. She hated it so much. She hated that woman who destroyed her family. She also hated herself. If she had a little sense of danger and had predicted that Bai Meiwei was up to no good, perhaps they wouldn't have ended up like this today. Jiang Rulin heard about Bai Jiao's threat from Bai Meiwei. After 2 days of careful consideration, she finally decided to sacrifice her daughter-in-law to protect her son. Her son still had a bright future. She couldn't just destroy it like this. As for Siki, although she also had feelings for her compared with her son, it didn't seem so important. At worst, she would give her more compensation. Add Xingwu 799. Chapter 431. Moreover, Bai Meiwei was pregnant with a son, which fulfilled her dream of having a grandson. Jiang Rulin was indeed a businesswoman. She was very calculative. However, Jiang Rulin still had some affection for Siki. She couldn't harden her heart and force her to divorce her son. Instead, she persuaded her nicely that if she really loved Shihao, she should think about his future and his reputation. She couldn't ruin his life. Siki knew what her mother-in-law was thinking. She pretended not to understand and kept silent. She had promised Lin Shihao that she would face it with him and persist until the end. Jiang Rulin couldn't persuade her the first time, so she tried a second time and a third time. Siki, you might not know, but Shihao has been having a hard time in the hospital. Bai Jiao is already pressuring him. If you don't divorce within a month, he will file a lawsuit with the court. Seeing that Meiwei's belly is getting bigger and bigger, there are already rumors in the hospital. Shihao might not be able to keep his position as the head of the obstetrics and gynecology department. Every time Jiang Rulin would bring new news. This news was all about how Lin Shihao was forced and tortured. Every time Siki pretended not to care. In fact, she was so upset that she wanted to cry. Lin Shihao had always kept these things from her and never told her. It was hard for her to imagine how a proud man like him could be mocked by others and deliberately made difficult for by his superiors, but he could only endure it. In front of her, he had to act as if nothing had happened. How much pain must his heart be in? The 1-month deadline was getting closer and closer. Siki watched him leave early and return late every day. He was so busy that even if he hid it well, she could see a trace of fatigue and worry between his brows. Sometimes, he would come home in the wee hours of the morning with a faint smell of tobacco on his body. He thought she was asleep, but in fact she had her back to him. She clenched her teeth and cried silently. In fact, not only were the Lin family suffering, but Bai Jiao also didn't feel good. Bai Jiao was a good doctor with noble medical ethics. He treated patients and saved people all his life. He didn't expect that when he was old, he would do such a disgraceful thing to force others. However, he only had one daughter. He couldn't watch her destroy herself. He had talked to his daughter before and knew that she had always liked Lin Shihao. He was a good man, but he was also a father. He wanted his daughter to be happy. In the last few days before the deadline, Bai Jiao made a private appointment with Siki. He said, "Mrs. Lin, the child in Meiwei's stomach is already more than 5 months old. I can't let her be ridiculed without any status. I hope you can divorce Lin Shihao as soon as possible." Siki looked calmly at the kind-looking old man in front of her and said calmly, "Director Bai, I can't decide on a divorce alone." Bai Jiao sighed. "I won't hide it from you. Actually, I don't want to take Lin Shihao to court. That will only make both our families look bad. However, if he is determined to not give Meiwei an explanation, I will continue to make a fuss even if I have to sacrifice my old face. Mrs. Lin, the only person who can turn this situation around is you. If you initiate a divorce, there is still a chance for things to turn around. You don't want to see your husband's reputation ruined, do you?" Everyone was forcing her as if Lin Shihao's reputation was ruined because of her. But the funny thing was that even she was forcing herself. Because, just as they said, she didn't want to see his reputation ruined. Xia Dong returned from Rome. She had recovered from her serious illness, had a new daughter, and had reconciled with Bailey Han. Siki was very happy for her, and the two of them agreed to go to the hot spring to catch up. While they were soaking in the hot spring, Xia Dong asked Siki if she had been doing well for the past 6 months. "We might have to get a divorce." Siki closed her eyes and said calmly. Only she knew the storm in her heart. Xia Dong approached her and asked, "Yezi, do you still love him?" She sniffled and almost cried. She said softly, "So what if I love him? Love can't withstand so much hurt. Xia, you don't know how tired I am. I'm really tired." She had been forced to a dead end by them and didn't want to persist any longer. At least this way she could protect Lin Shihao. After leaving the hot spring resort, Xiaodong asked the driver Old Chin to send Yi Siki home first. After the two of them hugged and said goodbye, Yi Siki held the gifts Xiaodong had brought back from abroad and stood at the intersection. She smiled and waved as she watched the car drive away. The closer she got to home, the fainter the joy of reuniting with her good friend after a long separation faded until it completely disappeared. Her empty heart was filled with sadness. Today was Saturday. Lin Shihao had been called to the hospital to work overtime. To him there were no days off now. Nyo was doing her homework in her room. When she heard the door open, the little girl immediately turned around and smiled in surprise. "Mommy, you're back. Did Auntie Xia buy me a gift?" Yi Siki smiled. "I didn't expect our Nyo to have the ability to predict the future. Here, this is from your Auntie Xia." She placed several beautifully wrapped boxes in her arms on her daughter's bed. Nyo cheered happily. She put down her pen, ran to the bedside, and happily opened the gift boxes. The first box contained a beautiful white princess dress, and the second box contained a Barbie doll. "Wow, it's so beautiful. I love it." Nyo jumped up and down happily. Yi Siki looked at her innocent and cute daughter and felt a wave of sadness in her heart. Although she had already decided to divorce, she couldn't bring herself to say it to her daughter. The doorbell rang. Yi Siki quickly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and smiled. "Nyo, we have guests. Mommy will open the door. You stay in the room and call Auntie Xia to thank her for the gift." Okay. Yi Siki opened the door to see Jiang Rulin standing at the door with an unfriendly expression. She smiled. "Mom, you're here." Jiang Rulin changed her shoes and walked straight to the living room without looking at her. She grumbled unhappily, "The deadline is almost up. Are you determined to send Shihao to jail?" Yi Siki clenched her fists. "Mom, let's talk in the bedroom." She was worried that her daughter would come out of the room and overhear their conversation. Jiang Rulin glanced at Nyo's room. She didn't say anything and followed her into the master bedroom. Yi Siki poured her a cup of tea and sat in the chair opposite her. She bit her lip and said unhurriedly, "Mom, I agree to divorce Shihao, but I have a condition." When Jiang Rulin heard this, her expression softened and her tone became much gentler. "Tell me. I can give you the car and the house." Yi Siki shook her head. "I don't want any of these things. I just want Nyo's custody." Jiang Rulin's expression changed slightly. "You're a woman. What ability do you have to support Nyo? Nyo can live a better life with her father. As long as you give up Nyo's custody, I'll satisfy you no matter how much compensation you want." Yi Siki looked into her eyes and said calmly, "No amount of money can bring back my daughter. I don't want anything. I just want my daughter." Jiang Rulin frowned. "Since you don't want anything, how are you going to support Nyo?" Yi Siki's lips curled. "With my current monthly salary, it won't be difficult to support Nyo and me." Jiang Rulin counted with her fingers and said, "Don't think of things as so simple. Housing, travel, daily necessities, and the child's education and clothes. Which of these doesn't need money? Nyo is my biological granddaughter. I'll provide her with better education and living conditions. You can't provide her with these things. Siki, even if it's for Nyo's sake, you should let her live with her father." "Mom, you don't have to persuade me anymore. I've already made up my mind. If you don't agree to my request, then I can't divorce Shihao." Yi Siki smiled faintly. "Mom, don't be too greedy. You can only choose between your son and your granddaughter." She had already done a lot of multiple-choice questions. It was time for them to do the multiple-choice questions. Jiang Rulin's expression was ugly. Her fingers gripped the armrest of the chair tightly. After a long silence, she finally compromised and said, "It's fine if you don't want the house and car. I'll give you 200,000. This money is for Nyo's custody. If you need money, you can look for me anytime." Perhaps this was the only way to ease her conscience. Yi Siki said, "Okay." She wouldn't take the initiative to fight for these things, but if they were willing to give it to her, she wouldn't refuse because she and the child had to live. "Then when are you going to get a divorce?" There were only 2 days left until the deadline set by Jiyao. "I'll prepare the divorce agreement today. The Civil Affairs Bureau isn't open on the weekend. We'll go get the divorce certificate next Monday." Jiang Rulin sighed. "Siki, to be honest, I remember all the good you've done for me and Shihao all these years. It's indeed my fault for finding trouble with you sometimes. I'm a narrow-minded person with an impatient temper. Please don't take it to heart if I've said anything that hurt you to heart. If I wasn't forced, I wouldn't want to be some evil mother-in-law and drive a wedge between you two. Yi Siki smiled faintly. Mom, I know. Don't worry, I won't blame you. I can only blame myself for not being fated to be with Shihao. Jiang Rulin held her hand and tightened it. Her eyes reddened slightly. Siki, Mom has let you down. Yi Siki smiled. It's okay, Mom. I won't be able to visit you often in the future. Take care of yourself. As she wished, her daughter-in-law agreed to the divorce. Jiang Rulin didn't feel happy. Instead, she felt a little sad. To be honest, Siki was a good daughter-in-law, but it was a pity that they weren't fated to be together. When Jiang Rulin left, her eyes were red, but Yi Siki didn't shed a single tear. Since they were going to break up, they should do it cleanly. She prepared the divorce agreement and signed her name on it. She planned to tell Lin Shihao about the divorce tomorrow. Come and see. Songshu 566. Chapter 432. Lin Shihao worked until late into the night before returning home. He opened the door and found Yi Siki sitting on the sofa waiting for him. He quickly changed his shoes and walked over to her. His voice was slightly hoarse as he said, "Honey, didn't I tell you not to wait for me? Are you tired?" Yi Siki pursed her lips and smiled. She moved closer to him and wrapped her arms around his waist, hugging him tightly. His body still carried the chill of the night. His handsome brows relaxed and a gentle smile appeared in his deep eyes. He kissed her hair gently. She leaned on his chest and listened to his deep and powerful heartbeat. Her heart ached, but she had a faint smile on her face. "Hubby, are you hungry? I made supper for you." He placed his broad palm on her waist and laughed deeply. "I wasn't hungry at first, but now that you mention it, I'm suddenly a little hungry." She looked up and kissed his thin chin. "Take a shower first. I'll heat up the supper." "Okay." He ruffled her hair and smiled affectionately. By the time Yi Siki brought out the supper, he had already taken a shower and changed into white home clothes. The gentle light made him look even more handsome, gentle and elegant. His chiseled face was even thinner and there was a faint smile on his thin lips. He quietly watched her walk towards him from afar. She had made him oatmeal, which had the effect of dispelling his restlessness and promoting sleep. The porridge was very fragrant and soft. After drinking half a bowl of porridge, his entire stomach felt warm and even his tired body seemed to relax a lot. She quietly nestled in his arms and listened to the ticking sound of the clock on the wall. Her heart was filled with desolation. If only time could stop and stop at this moment forever, how good would that be? She hugged his waist with both hands and slowly closed her eyes. She used her heart to feel the warmth of his body and listen to his heartbeat. She greedily breathed in the unique faint fragrance on his body. She wanted to engrave all of this in her mind because after tomorrow, he would no longer belong to her. Lin Shihao thought she had fallen asleep and smiled gently. He then carried her up and placed her on the bed. The moment he touched the bed, Yi Siki uneasily opened her eyes and hugged him even tighter in a panic. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Seeing her uneasy gaze, Lin Shihao's heart ached. He took the opportunity to lie beside her and pull her into his arms. Yi Siki couldn't sleep the whole night. She heard his steady breathing and knew that he had fallen asleep. She reached out her hand and stroked his well-defined cheek. It didn't matter that she couldn't see his face clearly in the dark night. She had already used her fingers to engrave him in her heart. The next morning, when Lin Shihao woke up, Yi Siki had already prepared breakfast. When he came out of the bedroom, she was wearing an apron and was busy in the kitchen. She turned her head and smiled brightly at him. "Hubby, you can have breakfast after washing up." He smiled and felt a little distressed. "Why don't you sleep a little longer? I want to watch you go to work." She washed her hands and brought the breakfast to the table. She urged him, "Hurry up and wash up. The breakfast will be cold later." Lin Shihao was about to go to work. Yi Siki wrapped a scarf around him and kissed him on the lips. Then she hugged him. "Hubby, go to work. I'll miss you." "Honey, I'll miss you too." Lin Shihao kissed her forehead and reluctantly let go of her. If he knew that this was their farewell kiss, he definitely wouldn't have left. Yi Siki stood in the corridor and watched him enter the elevator. The elevator door slowly closed and his handsome figure disappeared. She silently turned around and locked the door, crying silently. Yesterday afternoon, she had already rented a small two-bedroom apartment near the company. It cost her half a month's salary. There was a bed, a wardrobe, a washing machine, an air conditioner, and other appliances. She only needed to bring her suitcase in and she could move in. After Nyo finished breakfast, Yi Siki squatted in front of her and said softly, "Nyo, from today onwards, you and Mommy will move out, okay?" Nyonyo's beautiful big eyes widened. What? Is Daddy coming with us? No, it's just the two of us. Daddy will still live here. With every word she said, her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Nyonyo was stunned and suddenly burst into tears. Mommy, why are you two living separately? Are you getting a divorce? Is it because Grandma doesn't like me so she wants you to divorce Daddy? Yisiki's heart ached. She hugged her daughter tightly. Nyonyo, Daddy and Mommy are divorcing not because Grandma doesn't like you. Why? Why are you getting a divorce? I don't want you to get a divorce. Mommy, don't divorce, okay? Nyonyo cried and looked up at her pitifully with her big wet eyes. She kept begging her. Mommy, don't divorce. Nyonyo, listen to Mommy. Yisiki held her daughter's tear-stained face and coaxed her gently. Even if Daddy and Mommy divorce, you're still our Xiaobao. We'll still love you like before. You can come back to see Daddy often. No, I don't want to. I don't want you two to be separated. Nyonyo cried until she was out of breath. Her little face was red and her little chest was heaving violently. Her heartbroken look made Yisiki's heart ache to the extreme. Yisiki hugged her daughter and coaxed her. She tried to persuade her, but she couldn't persuade her to accept reality. Time passed, and the people from the moving company would soon come to help her move the luggage. However, Nyonyo was still throwing a tantrum in her arms and refused to leave. Yisiki had no choice but to harden her heart. She held her daughter's tender shoulders and said in a hoarse voice, Nyonyo, if you don't want to leave with Mommy, then stay here with Daddy. Her daughter had been closer to her since she was young and relied on her more. When she heard her words, she immediately panicked and cried loudly. She hugged her tightly and refused to let go. Nyonyo, Mommy also can't bear to leave your Daddy. However, if Mommy continues to be with Daddy, he will become a criminal and even go to jail. Do you want to see Daddy go to jail? Yisiki felt that she was being extremely cruel to force Nyonyo to accept these very realistic things. Nyonyo didn't quite understand. Although she didn't know why Daddy would go to jail if her parents were together, she didn't want Daddy to become a criminal. Therefore, she cried bitterly for a long time and made a racket for a long time. In the end, she accepted this reality. When Yisiki carried her daughter and left the home that they had lived in for 7 years, she and Nyonyo both shed tears at the same time. Nyonyo's eyes were swollen like walnuts. She leaned on her shoulder and didn't say a word. She just cried silently. The moving company moved their luggage to their new home. Nyonyo's new bedroom was much smaller than the previous one. She sat silently on the bed and hugged the teddy bear that Daddy gave her for Christmas. She secretly wiped away her tears. Yisiki forced herself to stay awake and tidied up their luggage in the living room. She looked up and saw her daughter's thin and small back. Her heart ached. Their divorce was a huge blow to her daughter. She would love her daughter even more in the future and slowly heal the hurt in her heart. A melodious ringtone sounded. It was Xiao Tianxing. Do you have time? Come out for a cup of coffee? Yisiki looked up at her daughter and quickly walked into her bedroom. She lowered her voice and said, I'm unpacking my luggage now. I don't have time. Unpacking your luggage? What are you doing? Are you going out to relax again? No. She paused. Nyonyo and I moved out. I'm planning to get a divorce. Xiao Tianxing was silent for 2 seconds. Are you serious? She nodded. I've already left the divorce agreement with him. Xiao Tianxing frowned and said in a deep voice, Tell me the address. I'll go to your place. Yisiki gripped her phone uncomfortably. Why are you coming? My place is a mess. I haven't tidied it up yet. Xiao Tianxing sounded impatient. Don't think too much. I'm worried about Nyonyo. Tell me the address. The corners of Yisiki's mouth twitched helplessly. In the end, she told him her address. She had just tidied up her and Nyonyo's clothes, took a mop and was about to clean when the doorbell rang. Xiao Tianxing was wearing a black coat, standing tall and handsome at the door. After he entered the door, he walked around as if he had returned to his own home. Finally, he smacked his lips. It's passable. It's just a little small. How big is the place for just the two of us to live in? Yisiki was a little speechless. Okay, you do what you need to do. I'll go see Nyonyo. Xiao Tianxing waved his hand and left her behind. He went straight to Nyonyo's room. Nyonyo had heard someone coming, but she was still immersed in her sadness and didn't want to talk to anyone. She sat on the bed in a daze, holding a big furry bear in her arms. Xiao Tianxing stood at the door and felt his heart ache when he saw her lonely little figure. After 2 seconds of silence, his lips curled up into a bright smile. He said in a light tone, Little Nyo, Uncle Xiao is here. Long time no see. Did you miss me? He squatted in front of Nyo and realized that her eyes were swollen like peaches. There were still traces of tears on her fair little face. Her chest was rising and falling slightly as she suppressed her sobs. Her little nose was red from rubbing like a cute chili. His heart ached as if it was being pricked by needles. He rubbed her soft hair lovingly and said softly, Nyo, Uncle Xiao will take you out to play, okay? Nyo didn't say anything. Her long eyelashes fluttered slightly and bean-sized tears rolled down again. Nyo, be good. Don't cry. Uncle Xiao, who had always been sharp-tongued, felt that he was at a loss for words for the first time. He didn't know how to make the little girl happy, so he could only hug her and gently pat her back. He said over and over again, be good. Don't cry. Xiao Tianxing didn't know if it was because his embrace was too similar to Lin Shihao's embrace or because she was tired from crying. After maintaining this position for half an hour, he suddenly realized that she had fallen asleep. Her little head was tightly pressed against his chest. A pair of tender little hands were firmly grabbing his clothes. This was a sign of insecurity. Ad Hongcha 866. Chapter 433. After Yi Siki finished cleaning, she walked to Nyo's room and found Xiao Tianxing sitting stiffly on the bed with a sleeping Nyo in his arms. She lowered her voice and said, put the child down. Aren't you tired carrying her like this? Xiao Tianxing also lowered his voice. I'm not tired. I'm afraid that I'll wake her up if I move. Yi Siki then noticed that Nyo was clutching his clothes with both hands. She roughly estimated that he had been in this position for at least an hour. How could he not be tired? She thought for a moment and said softly, you should put her on the bed. Nyo is sleeping soundly. She won't wake up. Shoo. Xiao Tianxing was afraid that she would wake Nyo up, so he gave her a look and said softly, I'm hungry. Go and cook. Yi Siki was a little touched when she saw that he was persevering so hard and refusing to give up. She shook her head and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She walked into the kitchen and prepared to cook. Suddenly, she realized that they had just moved in and didn't even have kitchen utensils. Xiao Tianxing noticed that Yi Siki had returned to Nyo's room. He lifted his chin and asked her with his eyes, what's the matter? She shrugged helplessly and said softly, we don't have kitchen utensils. Let's order takeout for lunch today. He raised his eyebrows and didn't object. Yi Siki found a restaurant with good reviews online and called to order takeout. Then she continued to tidy up the room. Nyo slept until the takeout arrived. She rubbed against Xiao Tianxing's arms in a daze and called out, Daddy, softly. Xiao Tianxing's heart trembled. A thought popped up in his mind. It would be great if such an adorable child was his daughter. Nyo didn't hear a response. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked up to see Xiao Tianxing. She blinked her slightly red and swollen eyes. Uncle Xiao? It's me, Nyo. Did you sleep enough? Xiao Tianxing smiled and rubbed her hair. She nodded in a daze. Then let's go eat now. Your mommy has ordered a lot of your favorite dishes. Xiao Tianxing stood up with her in his arms and walked to the living room. At the dinner table, Xiao Tianxing told a lot of jokes to make Nyo happy. Nyo finally smiled. Yi Siki looked at him gratefully. He raised his eyebrows proudly and looked very arrogant. Yi Siki was also amused by his childish expression. After eating and resting for a while, Yi Siki planned to go shopping at the supermarket. She had already made a long list and Xiao Tianxing insisted on going with them. There were many people in the supermarket. Most of them were there to buy New Year goods. Xiao Tianxing pushed the shopping cart while Yi Siki held Nyo's hand. At first glance they looked like a family of three. Yi Siki stood in front of the shelves with Nyo. When choosing goods, she always smiled and asked for Nyo's opinion. She deliberately teased her to interact with her so that she could pull her out of her sad mood. Nyo, look at this pillow. Isn't it cute? Yi Siki picked up a tanuki pillow and waved her arms with a smile. Do you like it? If you like it, we'll buy it. Nyo puffed up her cheeks and blinked her big eyes. She pointed at the pillow on the shelf with her pink finger. I like the Easy Bear pillow. Okay, then we'll buy the Easy Bear. Yi Siki put down the tanuki and picked up the Easy Bear pillow. She handed it to her daughter and smiled. Nyo, help mommy carry it, okay? Nyo nodded and obediently followed her mother with the Easy Bear pillow. Her attention was gradually attracted by the dazzling array of goods. In addition, Xiao Tianxing deliberately made her happy, so she temporarily forgot about her sadness. pots, pans, and daily necessities. The things they bought almost filled the trunk of Xiao Tianxing's car. He worked hard without complaint, carrying several shopping bags on his shoulders and finally sending the mother and daughter upstairs. After they finished packing, it was already past 5 in the afternoon. Yisiki smiled at Xiao Tianxing and said, "Thank you for your hard work today. Let me treat you to a meal. I know a good restaurant nearby." Xiao Tianxing shrugged. "Okay, I'm hungry too." After the meal, Yisiki called the waiter to pay the bill. The waiter looked at Xiao Tianxing and smiled. "Madam, your husband has already paid the bill." Xiao Tianxing's lips curved, but he didn't explain further. "Madam? Sir? What did this have to do with anything?" Yisiki was both embarrassed and amused. She explained, "You've misunderstood. I'm friends with this gentleman." The waiter quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm very sorry." "It's okay." After the waiter left, Yisiki complained, "Didn't we agree that it was my treat? Why did you secretly pay the bill?" Xiao Tianxing raised his eyebrows. "I've never let a woman pay the bill." Yisiki was speechless. "You're such a male chauvinist," he chuckled. "This is called gentlemanly behavior." On the way home, Nyonyo fell asleep in Yisiki's arms. Xiao Tianxing looked sideways at the mother and daughter and whispered, "It's almost the spring festival. Are you planning to spend it with the child alone?" Yisiki felt a tinge of bitterness in her heart. She said calmly, "If it's just the two of us, wouldn't it be too lonely? There's no need for a divorced woman to make herself so miserable. I'm planning to bring Nyonyo back to my parents' home for the spring festival. It's just that I haven't thought of how to tell my parents about the divorce. It's better to deal with the pain quickly than to prolong it. It's better to tell them sooner." Xiao Tianxing's deep eyes had a tinge of pity. "They're your parents. I think they'll understand you. I just don't want them to worry about me. Ever since I was young, they've always worried about me. I thought that after getting married, their lives would be easier." Her tone carried a hint of tiredness and sadness. "In our parents' eyes, we'll always be children." Xiao Tianxing chuckled. "Just like you. When you're 60 years old, Nyonyo will already be a parent. In your heart, she'll still be your child, right?" She smiled. "That's true. No matter how old Nyonyo is in my heart, she'll always be a little girl who needs my protection." He smiled. "If you don't want your parents to worry, then let them know that you're living well. Divorce isn't the end of life. It's the beginning of a new life. Siki, you're a very strong woman. You can do it." Her eyes welled up. I can do it." Xiao Tianxing sent the mother and daughter home. Before he left, he nagged her to lock the door and close the windows. She nodded repeatedly. He was still worried, so he took her phone and set his phone number to 1. Then he returned the phone to her. "I've already set my number to speed dial. If there's anything, feel free to contact me." I know. Hurry home. It's cold and the roads are dark. Drive carefully." He smiled. "If I don't leave, you'll push me out of the door, won't you?" She was embarrassed. "No way. I just don't want to waste any more of your time." His smile widened. He suddenly took a step forward and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear, "Take care of yourself and Nyonyo. Good night." Her face was burning hot. She reached out to push him away, but he had already let go of her. He raised his eyebrows and left happily. She was amused and angry at the same time. He finally left. She was the only one left in the empty living room. She glanced at Nyonyo's room and suddenly felt a little sad. She hugged her knees and sat on the sofa in a daze. She didn't know how long she had been sitting there in a daze. Her phone suddenly rang. Her body trembled and she snapped back to her senses. She glanced at the caller ID and her heart jumped. Shihao. She pressed the answer button and went back to her bedroom. When Lin Shihao came home from work, he realized that Yisiki and Nyonyo were gone. Their clothes and daily necessities were also gone. He immediately had a bad feeling. He was so nervous that his heart almost stopped beating. His fingers trembled as he dialed Yisiki's number. When he heard her familiar voice on the other end of the phone, he gripped the phone tightly and tried to control his emotions. "Honey, where did you and Nyonyo go? When are you coming back?" Yisiki's eyes glistened with tears. She said slowly, "Shihao, I left a divorce agreement on the bedside table on the right. I've already signed it. Take some time tomorrow and we'll go and settle the divorce procedures." Lin Shihao quickly ran to the bedside table and opened the bedside table. Indeed, there was a divorce agreement lying inside. The blood in his body seemed to have stopped flowing. His whole body was icy cold. His chest rose and fell rapidly. He clenched his fists tightly. His deep eyes were surging with shocking anger. I don't agree to the divorce. You promised me that you would stay with me until the end. Isiki, how dare you lie to me? Isiki's eyelashes fluttered. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She tried her best to calm her voice. Shihao, I'm sorry. I can't take it anymore. Bai Meiwei's child is almost 6 months old. I can't accept another woman's child calling you daddy. So let's get a divorce. Her words were like a basin of cold water that instantly extinguished his burning anger. He took 2 steps back and slammed heavily against the wall. His back was almost numb from the pain. She had once said that if Bai Meiwei insisted on giving birth to the child, she would leave with Nyonyo. She wasn't just saying it. She really couldn't accept it. Yet he was forcing her to accept this reality. Was he too cruel? There was dead silence on the phone. Isiki started to feel uneasy. She softly called out his name. Shihao. Lin Shihao felt as if someone had opened a big hole in his chest. The cold wind blew into his chest, causing him to shiver from the cold. He gritted his teeth hard and said in a low and hoarse voice, I won't agree to the divorce. I won't agree to it even if I die. Isiki bit her lip and held back her sobs. She slowly said, Lin Shihao, let me go. Don't make me hate you. Lin Shihao's eyes were red. He stared fixedly at their wedding photo on the wall and said slowly, then hate me. Even if she hated him, he didn't want to let her go. She was his wife. She would be his forever. Attention Hongcha 866. Chapter 434. Isiki's face was covered in tears. Her voice trembled as she said, Why are you doing this? Don't you know that I don't love you anymore? I'll wait for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 tomorrow morning. After saying this, she immediately hung up the phone and started to cry bitterly. She didn't dare to cry too loudly for fear of waking her daughter up. She covered her mouth with both hands and her chest tightened as if it was about to explode. She felt so uncomfortable that she couldn't even breathe properly. Lin Shihao still had a lot to say to her, but before he could ask her where she and Nyonyo were staying, she hung up the phone. He quickly dialed her number again, but her phone was turned off. Lin Shihao's emotions were extremely complicated. Anger and heartache intertwined together and made him feel suffocated. He was like a violent lion as he punched the wall with all his might. The veins on the back of his hand were throbbing and his knuckles were turning white. His tall and straight body was trembling from his anger. The sudden burst of coldness in his eyes made one shudder in fear. Isiki specially took a day off to prepare for the divorce. She sat in the lobby of the Civil Affairs Bureau and waited for more than an hour, but Lin Shihao didn't show up. She took out her phone and dialed his number. After 3 or 4 rings the call went through. She said softly, Shihao, I'm waiting for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Come over quickly. She didn't know that Lin Shihao was standing outside the Civil Affairs Bureau and looking at her through the glass door. His thin lips were pursed and his expression was cold. His voice was cold as he said, I said before that I won't agree to the divorce. You don't have to wait for me anymore. No matter how long you wait, I won't appear. She frowned. Shihao, don't be like this. Beep beep, he had already hung up the phone. Isiki sat there in a daze. She held the phone in her hand and her heart was in a mess. He knew that the marriage couldn't be maintained, so why did he persist? Wasn't he afraid that his reputation would be ruined? She sat there in a daze and didn't know what to do. Although she hadn't gotten the divorce certificate yet, she should tell Bai Jiao that they were about to divorce so that he would give up the idea of suing Lin Shihao. Thinking of this, she immediately called Bai Jiao. Dean Bai, let me tell you, Shihao and I have decided to divorce. We are going through the divorce procedures. I understand. I'll deal with it. Mrs. Lin, I'm very sorry that things have come to this. Isiki smirked and said calmly, I'm no longer Mrs. Lin. Your daughter will become the new Mrs. Lin. Bai Jiao paused. I'm sorry. Her tone was very calm. There's no need to apologize. I just hope that you will keep your promise and not embarrass him anymore. I will. Lin Shihao stood outside the glass door and stared at her back. He saw her sitting there in a daze for a long time. He saw her making a call. He saw her putting her phone away and picking up her handbag to leave. He quickly hid behind the stone pillar. She walked to the side of the road and hailed a taxi. He quickly ran to his car and got in. His eyes followed the taxi closely. Isiki's original plan was to go through the divorce procedures in the morning and then take Nyonyo back to her parents' home to tell them about her divorce. Now that the divorce had not been finalized and she didn't want to waste this day of vacation, she decided to take the child back to her parents' home. The taxi drove her directly into the neighborhood and stopped under the building where she lived. "Thank you, sir." Isiki took the change from the driver and turned to go upstairs. She didn't notice Lin Shihao's car following her into the neighborhood. Isiki opened the door and saw Nyonyo hugging the stuffed bear and watching cartoons on the sofa. She smiled. "Nyonyo, we're going to Grandma's house today. Hurry up and get changed." Nyonyo replied with an, "Oh." She put the stuffed bear on the sofa and went back to her room to get changed. At this moment, the doorbell rang. Isiki looked through the peephole and her heart tightened. It was Lin Shihao. How did he find this place? "Honey, open the door. I know you're inside." When Lin Shihao walked into the corridor, he realized that the elevator had already gone up and stopped on the 5th floor. He guessed that Siki lived on the 5th floor. There were 2 families living on the 5th floor. He had already knocked on the door of the opposite house. There was an old lady living inside, so he concluded that Siki lived in this house. Isiki gritted her teeth. She decided to pretend that there was no one in the house and refused to open the door for him. Lin Shihao's heart was burning with anger. He was too lazy to press the doorbell. He knocked on the door loudly and shouted, "Isiki, if you don't open the door for me, I'll keep knocking." Isiki covered her ears with both hands and thought to herself, "I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. Mommy, is Daddy knocking on the door?" Nyonyo came out after changing her clothes. When she heard the knocking, a surprised smile immediately appeared on her little face. Isiki's expression was very ugly. She shook her head and said, "No, Nyonyo, you heard wrong." Just as she finished speaking, Lin Shihao shouted again, "Isiki, open the door for me." Nyonyo pouted and said, "It's obviously Daddy's voice. Mommy, why don't you open the door for Daddy?" Isiki was very helpless. She didn't know how to answer her. "Nyonyo, you're inside, right? Daddy is here. Good girl, hurry up and open the door for Daddy." Since one path didn't work, Lin Shihao tried another. "Daddy, I'm here. I'll open the door for you right away." Nyonyo ran to the door excitedly. Isiki hugged her waist and lifted her off the ground, preventing her from opening the door. Nyonyo struggled to move her little body, trying to struggle out of her embrace. However, her arms were wrapped tightly around her. Nyonyo was anxious and sad. She burst into tears and said, "Mommy, what are you doing? Why won't you open the door for Daddy? I miss Daddy so much. Mommy is bad. Mommy is a bad person." Nyonyo's tears kept falling. She wiped the tears on her face with the back of her soft hand, looking very pitiful. Isiki's heart ached. The man outside was still shouting and yelling for her to open the door. She was annoyed and confused. In the end, she compromised with the father and daughter pair and opened the door with Nyonyo in her arms. As soon as the door opened, Nyonyo immediately stretched out her arms towards Lin Shihao and cried, "Daddy, I missed you so much." Lin Shihao didn't allow any explanation and snatched Nyonyo from Isiki's arms. He hugged her tightly and kissed her cheek. "Nyonyo, be good. Daddy is here. Daddy missed you too." Nyonyo lay in his arms and cried sadly. She sobbed and said, "Daddy, don't divorce, okay? I don't want to be separated from you. We won't divorce. Daddy and Mommy will never divorce. Be good, Nyonyo. Don't cry anymore. You're making Daddy's heart ache." Lin Shihao carried his daughter to the living room and coaxed her gently. Isiki closed the door. With her back facing the father and daughter pair, she secretly wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Lin Shihao hugged his daughter and comforted her patiently. After making his daughter happy, he kissed her cheek and said gently, "Nyonyo, Daddy and Mommy have something to talk about. Go back to your room and do your homework first, okay?" "Okay." She smiled sweetly and kissed him back on the cheek. She jumped out of his arms and onto the floor and walked towards her room. Lin Shihao smiled as he watched her petite figure disappear into the distance. After walking for some distance, she suddenly turned around and stared at Isiki with her big beautiful eyes. She puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "Mommy, you can't chase Daddy out when I'm not paying attention." Isiki pursed her lips helplessly. "I know. I won't." She grinned and smiled brightly. "Then I'm relieved. I'm going back to my room." Seeing her skipping back to her room, Isiki and Lin Shihao felt very sad. 2 days ago their daughter was still Wu Yu's carefree little girl. But now she was so sensible that it made their heart ache. Isiki poured a cup of tea and placed it in front of Lin Shihao. Then she sat across from him and pursed her lips, remaining silent. Lin Shihao's deep gaze fell on her body. He hadn't seen her for a day, but it felt like he hadn't seen her for a year. He missed her so much that his heart ached. Last night, he lay alone on the large bed that belonged to them and couldn't sleep the entire night. He hugged her pillow in his arms and it emitted a faint lemon scent. It was the scent of the shampoo they were used to using. There was also a faint scent of her on the quilt. He was surrounded by her scent, and his longing for her didn't lessen at all. Instead, he missed her even more. His burning gaze made her feel uncomfortable. She lowered her eyes and stroked the short hair by her ear, trying to say something to break the heavy atmosphere. "How did you know I live here?" She tucked her hair behind her ear, revealing her pink and small ears and half of her fair neck. His deep gaze followed her movements and became increasingly passionate. He clenched his fingers slightly and said in a deep voice, "I've been outside the Civil Affairs Bureau the entire time. I followed your taxi and found this place." Isiki widened her eyes in surprise and looked up at him. "Since you're at the Civil Affairs Bureau, why didn't you come out to see me?" "Because I don't want to divorce you. Don't mention divorce again in the future." Lin Shihao's obsidian-like eyes surged with pain. His voice was low and slow with a hint of pleading. "Wifey, I know I've broken your heart. I also know you can't accept that child, but I love you. I really can't leave you. Let's start over, okay? We're already done. There's no way to start over." Isiki gritted her teeth and forced herself to say something ruthless. Lin Shihao suddenly stood up. She was shocked and didn't know what he wanted to do. In the next second, he was already sitting beside her and hugging her tightly in his arms. His voice was low. "Wifey, let's leave a city and go somewhere else. We can definitely start over." She bitterly tugged at the corner of her lips. "Can we leave? Our parents are all here and your career is also here." He hugged her even tighter. "My career is far less important to me than you and Nyonyo. As for our parents, as long as we have the heart, we can take care of them no matter how far they are. Let's go to Sea City. That's where we went to university. Don't you like that city a lot?" He described the future so beautifully that she was almost moved. Beauty novel Hongcha 866. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.